calls the meeting to order. Okay. Good morning. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Board of Directors workshop for Monday, November 19th. It's 9:30 in the morning. Move to adopt the agenda.
Motion to adopt.
Thank you, Debbie. We have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kevin. Nice try. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
At least I got my eye in there.
Okay, we have three quick updates and then a very robust agenda today.
Patrick, you want to stand at the podium or sit next to Jackson?
First, quick update, website revisions. Patrick is coming to the podium to give us updates. Anything update from 2 weeks ago?
Not much of a big update.
Okay.
We are finalizing the front page and basically that portal to get into the site. We went through a series of photos from the photo shoot just to try and narrow down that look and feel on that front page before we present, before we sit down with the board liaisons and take a look at how that front page is going to function. Once we get through a lot of the fine details of what it will look like, then we can move forward with dumping a number of information in there, that transport from the old site to the new site. And so there's not much of an update besides we're just currently moving forward with getting that visual feel going.
Quick question, Brian, can you hear us? Can you hear Patrick?
I could hear all of you fine, but I couldn't hear Patrick hardly at all. He's speaking into a microphone.
He is speaking into the microphone. But the basic update is there, got some photos in there in the website and getting ready to move it forward to more details for us to look at.
And Patrick, they're still on the timeline that we have, right, for completion? There's nothing that has put them back on the timeline?
Nothing that puts them back. My only concern is holidays, as you know, we would expect them to kind of take a day off, a day or two during like Thanksgiving and some of these things. But
what is the timeline? Kevin and I are the first reviews, correct?
Yes.
Is that where we still are? The board is still okay with that? With Kevin and I doing quick review, or I'm sorry, a more in-depth review before the whole board sees it?
I mean,
right.
That makes sense for the process, yeah.
Yeah.
Because we only get one revision, so I don't want to.
Do we only get one revision or three revisions?
The revisions will be just kind of cleaning up.
It's not major.
Just nothing. They're not major revisions. So as we move forward, we are making essentially this is what it's going to be. If we're making a slight revision, it's a slight revision. But we do have revisions. They're not going to ever come back and say, sorry, you're up with your 3 revisions. We make changes as we go along.
To me, the biggest thing is the functionality, and it's doing what Kevin and I sat and we had some board discussions on this, sat and went through a lot of details about functions we would like this new site to have.
Right.
So we hope that those sites are there. To me, that's the thing, that we're blocking off non-resident access.
Right.
We have open and closed sections.
Right. There will be a login portal. As you log in, there will be more pages that open up that are just tailored for residents versus the public site.
How are you doing with, one of my big thing was, I wanted to have the documents accessible on that website for the owners. Do you have all the information to put up? So meaning older agendas, older meetings, older, all the documents when it comes to CCS and what CCS is, or CJC and what it is. There's a lot of documents that I feel as though are missing from the current website, and it could have just been time, oversight, whatever the case was. But I'd like it to be a true resource for the residents to not bog down town hall when they ask for a certain, hey, can I have the document about this? It's already there.
Well, we can definitely take a look at what we do currently have up. So what's on our current website is what's going on to the new website. So if there's something missing there, we can just kind of stage that and have that ready to be populated into the new website as well. Okay. It's a document and it doesn't take up much space. So
should we, and I'll take your advice on this, should we get together perhaps in the next 2 weeks or so before the holidays kind of get out of our control, and just go through these points to make sure that we're all on the right track?
Sure. Are you looking for like a hour or 2 meeting, or?
Yeah. I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think that's good. And to me, there were also some functions that we wanted that the current website doesn't have. There were some things that we had identified that is not feasible on the current website.
Yeah, there were a number of things.
Those are being folded in.
Right, and we're making sure that
Okay.
those are implemented.
So then stepping back, once we take, if you will, take delivery and it's done, then the suggestions, Kevin has one, Jackson, Brian has a suggestion, then it's on you to update it.
Correct.
Or add a link or add a section.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
And so
Or
you
we
are,
need their support to add it.
Yes.
Yeah.
well, you might need their support.
Which may include an additional cost.
Is this a WordPress-based site?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So you guys can add content.
So within WordPress, you could add pages, you could add posts, you could,
Yeah.
it's not rocket science to do
Right.
this stuff once you've got your template laid out. So I'm assuming that if there was a change in a document that Kevin wanted to see up there, it would not be very difficult for you to get onto WordPress in the dashboard, go to pages, add the
Right.
page, put the
Right.
link in, and
Exactly.
because you've already got the structure, right?
Exactly.
Patrick, I want to revisit something we talked about a year ago, and then most recently it came up, and it was the accessibility to the live streaming. Is that going to be password protected in order to live stream?
So anything video function related for live streaming, that will be on the protected page. But what doesn't stop, though, is the fact that anyone that has access to YouTube will know they don't have to go through our website to see the videos.
So that's
so-
what one of our topics to talk about was, and is it to go to a different server? Like, is it Vimeo? Is that how you say it?
Vimeo is what we used before, right, and Vimeo has released, at the time we were using Vimeo, years prior, there was no live feature. We since went with YouTube because of the live option, and that worked for us before we said, we want to pretty much lock this down to just residents. Vimeo has released one since then. I haven't used it. I don't know how it functions, but it's probably not rocket science.
The problem with
but-
Vimeo is that you pay for bandwidth, and we use a tremendous amount of bandwidth. I think you'd find it gets expensive really fast. I've got
It could.
thousands of hours of lectures online, and it's very expensive when you start adding up hour after hour after hour. So I'm not sure that that'll be the solution. I think this idea that anyone can have access on YouTube is, in a sense, it's good because we want to be transparent, but in a sense, it's also bad. I mean, a number of us were approached by a book writer journalist who decided by watching the YouTube videos that they wanted to do an update to their celebration story, and they started using the old videos of CROA meetings for interviews. Well, I'm not in love with that idea. That person's not a resident. It's not really their information. It really isn't something they should have access to, but there it is. And I'm not sure we're going to find a solution that somebody that's adept on the computer or on the internet couldn't get around no matter what we did. So I think there's going to be a trade-off here, one way or the other.
I mean, if we do I know we want to do the live, but if we did a delay, would that take it off of YouTube and keep it more, if we did like like we used to do where you tape it and then do.
No difference.
You would just keep it on YouTube anyway?
Yeah,
there's no way to
just a
do it.
2-day delay, they'll still get the information. It's still going to the same holding cell.
What kind of price are we talking as far as
You have to do
Vimeo?
it differently.
It can run into the thousands of dollars per month very quickly.
Per month,
Yeah.
per month.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, when it's the difference between a 4-minute music video and a 2-hour, 3-hour board workshop twice a month, and, the other things. When we start talking about significant numbers of hours, and then they start to look at bandwidth and views, and there's some benefits. You get some volume pricing, but
Yeah,
it's not inexpensive.
Jackson's correct. We used to host just one video per month, and that was just the board meeting. Since then, we're now doing a board meeting and most months 2
Right.
additional workshops, plus any other publication that we want to just throw in there as well. So definitely bandwidth would be a factor in pricing and trying to find that solution. It's a little difficult.
Here's a quick thing. There are, from what I understand, 3 different types of settings for a video. There's private, there's public, and there's unlisted.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with
Yeah, you can
unlisted
set up private or
specifically?
unlisted, and then someone has to have
The link.
The link.
Through the resident forum.
Right. The problem is when you're streaming, you have to stream into a public mode first, and then you would have to convert it. So
That's why I was asking if we did the delay.
yeah. So it's more complicated. It's not impossible. I think we have to have a view of what we want to do first, and then I'm confident that Patrick and
Yeah.
his team can figure out the mechanics behind it. But I'm not sure that we necessarily know yet as a board if we want to be totally transparent, if we want to lock this down to only residents or only homeowners, since we're CROA. Do we want residents to be aware if they're renters? I mean, there's a lot of things that we sort of began to talk about at the beginning of the year, and I'm not sure that we've resolved.
So maybe you can look at some options for us to consider, and then again, get at some of those guiding foundations for us.
Yep, I can do that.
Is that okay?
Yep.
So I think the conclusion is we'll do 3 of us or 4 of us or whomever else from management, you and JR, it's who we met with before, and take a behind-the-scenes look.
It'll probably just be the
Kind of-
3 of us.
Yeah, this week, next week, well, not this week, next couple of weeks. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Perfect, thank you. Any update on county dumpster ordinance proposal, so we can move it off our
The
list?
update I have right now is I've gotten comments from Brian, and then I have the comments that Jack forwarded from our Covenants Committee Chair, and that's the only comments that I have today.
So those then go, what's the next step on that, to move it?
Well, if there's no other comments from the board, then I can compile what we have now, and Jack and I can take the next steps with reaching out to the county.
Well,
Brian?
I'd like.
Go ahead.
Well, my comment was I found the whole thing confusing. It was
Go ahead, Brian.
Go ahead.
Did we lose you, Brian?
The light is still on.
Let me just say something about the covenant, the thing. The original thing started about probably 7 or 8 years ago, and as a result of dumpsters and
Right.
pods and trailers parked on the street, and then it lay dormant until Floyd asked me about that about a couple months ago, and it had gone to the county before. The county said, "Hey, we like this stuff." The only problem is that we would have to have a 51% vote in order to enact this thing, which we probably would never get. So I gave it to Floyd, and somehow we got the ear of the county, and they said, "Hey, we'd be willing to do it." And when I talked over with Steve, we said, "Well, we have a lot of things in our charter, such as no more than 2 cars parking on the street, trailers, various things that if we put them in an ordinance, we'd be able to enforce them a little bit better." So I said, "That's fine." My personal feeling right now is I'll be coming off the board. I don't see anybody out there is really pressing for this right now. I would just as soon be done with it and erase it.
Yeah, I agree with Jack. I've been one of the people that's pressed for us to expand our reach, so I suppose it sounds a little weird for me to say, I think this is beyond our grasp. I think we're overreaching a little bit.
I can tell you that it's not beyond our grasp as far as the dumpsters, pods, and trailers, okay? The parking may be beyond our reach. And I'm only saying that because Indian Wells and another place over there did have dumpster ordinance created, and it's not an unusual thing. You can look up dumpster ordinances in the internet, and they're all over the place. The biggest thing is that they provide a background where we have proper marking on the dumpsters, proper placement of the dumpsters, and also proper emptying them. Okay, what we have here in Celebration, a dumpster becomes a target of opportunity. Everybody throws something in there. Trash is not allowed to go in there. People fill it above the fill line, and it blows all over the place. And that's what the thing was originally intended to create, because we have a situation where a dumpster was contracted by one of the guys down here on Celebration Avenue, and it sat there in North Village for 3 months,
Right.
and it didn't get
Decorated for
emptied.
Christmas. Yeah,
It didn't get emptied only because he refused to pay the dumpster person. Okay, and to me that was unconscionable.
I don't disagree on the substance.
Yeah.
I think what I'm concerned about is that Osceola County has an elected set of commissioners. This is their job to do, and I'm really nervous. For example, this ordinance requires the existence of a homeowners association, issuance of the permits.
Well, no, that got changed.
Well,
That was going to be the
I
county.
understand, but it's this the general flavor of this ordinance is, we're doing the county's work for them. And I'm willing to do the county's work for them for $2.1 million when we get down to that agenda item. But I'm not particularly anxious to take on the job of writing county ordinances when the county should be taking that
Well,
responsibility.
This was a suggestion. The county would have to have their attorneys write the
Right,
ordinance. There's no
right.
question about that. Okay? We just basically pass it on to them and say, hey, we want something done, and it's up to them if they want to pass it or not.
Brian, are you back?
Yeah, I'm here. I agree that I just table this one. I agree with Jack's recommendation.
Okay.
He said table.
Oh, good job, Brian.
Well, the other thing we can do is, once we get to the interlocal conversation, we'll be setting up a follow-up meeting with Beth Ann Knight.
Yeah.
And we can bring this up to her and say that this is a concern and ask them if it's something that they can look at. I would agree, we're not really in the business of writing ordinances for the county, so they have people that do that. If it's a hot topic,
So we can
push it.
share.
Or we might, like you all are saying now, just table for now and revisit
Table for now?
later in the future.
Kevin, okay?
Yeah.
Debbie?
I mean,
Okay.
I move to table.
Jackson moves to table.
Second?
Second from Debbie. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Brian. So Brian, so it's all 6 ayes. Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Brian, any update at this point, or no?
I can give
Or Steve?
the thing that after we had our meeting last Wednesday, Whit and I talked quickly in the hallway. We're just going to get through Thanksgiving, and then we'll revisit next week and get everything scheduled,
Okay.
which would be the kickoff meeting. And then the real public input and those meetings will all begin in January.
Right. That was their
But,
timeline.
We'll work with JR also for the January newspaper to have a article just about being involved and active in participating in the initiatives that'll take place at the beginning of next year.
Okay. You hear everything, Brian, okay?
Yeah, not much. The only thing I would add, Dave, is to the extent you have comments, we need to know them quickly. I mean, next week would be fine, but whatever comments you have.
Why don't I write up my comments and send them to everyone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to,
Jackson?
I'd just like to clarify one thing. Brian and I talked a little bit about this afterwards. I just want to clarify that this plan that we're doing will be based on, it will have a starting point of the work that's already been done, which is why we're paying a quarter of the price, not the full price.
Right.
I've heard from some people, many people have said that we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater, that all the work that went in before would be gone, and that's not accurate.
That's not true.
So the efforts to put certain things into the recreation plan will still be considered as part of our starting point. Is that an accurate understanding of the rest
Yes,
of the board?
the scope of work is very clear that it is to not rebuild, but to build upon the existing master plan.
So that's confirmed. It's building on the existing master plan.
Yes.
And some of the items in the existing master plan may disappear based on new feedback and current conditions of residents.
Doesn't mean it
residents.
won't change.
Right, and again, remember,
I think, just, as I had told Jackson, everybody agreed with Steve's synopsis that this is a $100,000 project if we don't start with the previous stuff. So, I mean, there should be no doubt in anybody's saying we're not going down a $100,000 project thing.
so to repeat what Brian said, if we were to start over or start from fresh with a comprehensive master plan, we'd probably be looking at about $100,000. Because we have a good portion of this already completed, we'll just be utilizing that and building upon it. And again, when we get all this data back from the different focus groups and the statistically valid survey and the online survey, there's going to be decisions made from the highest level of stakeholders, which is the final vote decision makers on when you're spending your money and how you're spending your money. So all that will be utilized to prioritize and then vote upon a final master plan.
Okay.
Great.
Anything else on that before we move to our first big agenda item? Okay, first big agenda item is the interlocal agreement that, and to me there's several different parts on this. We as a board, Steve received it, shared it with the board, we've made comments, the attorney has responded to comments, so I think we want to discuss that. We also want to discuss the process going forward. What are our next steps and the engagement of the community? And then the potential timeline. Should we decide to move forward? What would be the timeline for us actually making that decision, that voting? So we've all seen the attorney's comments. So a question, Steve. The comments that came forward, I think Brian and I had detailed comments, and I don't know if others had detailed comments that were shared with you and the attorney. But do you think all of those, oh, Debbie did, yeah.
Yeah, shared some too.
So were all of those addressed in your opinion?
Everything that was sent to me was sent on to the to Attorney Slayton, and then this is what the product that he brought back to us. So it looks like they were all addressed. If there's anything that you all see that still needs further attention, let me know. But it looks like our next steps now, since we've gone through this part of the process, is to reconnect with the county next week and get a meeting set up where we can go sit down with them, talk about our changes. It looks like we're close, though. It looks like what we've seen from your comments and from Mr. Slayton is that we're pretty close on this.
So the biggest thing that I had in what I noted, I know I had a dozen things, some were very minor and some, but the biggest substantive one that I did not see addressed is Section 8. It's called ownership. And I'll read it. It's one sentence. Upon completion of the recreation facilities, CROA shall retain sole ownership of the recreation facilities, which is fine, and must ensure appropriate public usage and access to the facility for a period of no less than 25 years from the date of public opening. I was asking for a definition of what is appropriate public usage and access.
And
What does that, I didn't see that.
That's addressed in Section 7.
Which is,
I was going to say that's the Section 7.
Is it?
Which Section 7 is the section I have concern with. I still feel it changed a lot from our initial, not the one you came back with the initial one that we were shown, and I just don't feel that we've been real transparent to the community with that either.
Well, the prioritization that you see here, the community user group priority table, is the same priority table I've been sending out since we started. Now, it is different from what we did with the community center, but when it came to athletic fields, this has been the prioritization usage from the get-go. And the reason why this is it is because this is the same prioritization that we're using now with our K-8 facility usage agreement. It's no different. I mean, our association programming and athletic groups are the groups that are run by the program partnerships that we have in town. So we have an entire recreation program plan that sets up prioritization for community residents to have first crack at registration, and they get a lower rate, lower user fee than non-residents do.
my one concern with Section 7 most specifically would be economic impact events. And I understand that the funding is coming through EK, Experience Kissimmee. However, if Experience Kissimmee decides that they're going to make this big soccer event that brings people from all over the world, what kind of impact not only to those fields and the maintenance and the repair or whatever the case is, but just the impact on the community overall? I know that's where indirectly the money comes from, but Experience Kissimmee, the way their budget works is they got to use it or lose it. So they just spend the money like wildfire at the end of their budget. Is that the best location for C? Should that be jumped down to the bottom? Should resident rental be above that? You know, I understand in order to get the money, we have to allow that. But is that above a resident rental?
I think.
Well, I guess what I don't understand is I could understand residents wanting to rent stuff in a community center. Residents aren't going to rent soccer fields, except on a rare occasion.
Let me just mirror what Brian's saying here. We have to look at the behavior of our youth athletic, or our athletic field rentals and our usage. If we look at just people renting athletic fields, it doesn't happen other than groups. Like if there's a group from Wild World of Sports or an outside group that wants to come in and do a game or practice. Residents have 54 plus parks, green space throughout the community. That comes along with their assessments, that they can just walk on and kick a soccer ball or throw a frisbee. What we will see, though, is predominantly those fields will be used during the peak hours, Monday through Friday, probably between the hours of 5 and 10, for practices for our league play, and then Saturdays will be league play. Sundays will probably be some sort of adult league play that will be full. And then, other than that, the fields will be booked, and in the openings that you have then will be, a group will come to us and say, hey, we're in the tournament next door at Wild World of Sports. We need that synthetic turf for an hour. We're willing to pay $75 or whatever that number is. And that's revenue now that you're bringing in to offset the expenses for those fields.
So two things with what you just said. Was that listing of things, all those were covered in Section A? Those youth clubs and so forth, those are all currently within association programming and athletic groups,
Yes,
correct?
yes.
And then second question is, out of something like the Wild World of Sports wanting to rent the facilities, where does that fit?
That would fall, excuse me, underneath economic impact events or Osceola County Commission-sponsored events. And in my mind, those two are probably going to be one and the same. I don't know that there's going to be any.
That wouldn't go to A at all?
Want to go to A?
What?
Because it would be
Local
an
groups.
athletic, it doesn't, hold on, local groups, got it.
Association
That's the
programming,
word
which
there.
is defined in our recreation program plan as going through our vetting process to be a program partner with us.
Okay, that helps me.
And that's going to take up a majority of the field space. And then we also have the ability to, it's always going to be type of use and amount of use that will cause the wear and tear on the fields. The synthetic turf field, neither one of those two are going to cause damage to them. It's going to be used and it will stand up to it. But we have the ability then to close the other two fields down when we need to. And I fully expect that at the end of the spring season, leading into summer, we're going to need to close them down for a couple weeks. At the end of the fall season, leading into the winter, when you go into your rise seed, your overseeding period, we're going to need to close them down probably for about a month. And we have to have it's really educating the community to understand that this isn't a neighborhood park where it's just walk on at any time. This is a reservation system to utilize these fields to keep them at the quality that they need to be kept at.
So in reality, there is no resident rental.
It would be few and far between. Yeah, right.
Okay.
I don't see a lot of people doing it.
So digging into Kevin's point, if a large tournament were to be held here, their application includes their management plan.
Correct.
And if there's damage to facilities, for example, the concession stand, if there's damage, that sponsoring group is responsible. Is that correct?
And we'll set up.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Working with the recreation committee, we'll set up those rules. What
Okay.
are the deposits? What are the fees? What are the penalties if it doesn't get returned?
Implications for the future, you can't book again, or?
Yeah. And that's part of, in this interlocal agreement, CROA manages and maintains it. So we have the ability to say, all right, if the fields aren't in good condition, we're closing them down for a few weeks.
I want to go back to go ahead.
My only final comment with A, we do name specific groups currently. Is it best, I appreciate that they're in there so I can understand, that we can understand what they are. Do we want to have the document signed with those names in there? In the event one of these groups, for whatever reason, is not renewed as a partner with Celebration with CROA, will they be able to go back to the county and say, well, I already have an agreement with the county?
I think we could add the word examples would include in the parens. It also says in any other new agreements, but I agree. I don't think we want to limit ourselves to those specific groups, and the names of those groups could change, and certainly over 25 years they would. To
Or
David's question about
current
Section
examples,
8,
current examples included.
yeah, current examples. To your question about Section 8, I think after the words ensure appropriate public usage and access as per Section 7 of this agreement would resolve that problem.
Yes, and that's exactly what I was going to propose. For item 8, it does not specify that that's what it is in 7, because that's subject to interpretation. So then the follow-on question for number 8, where they talk about appropriate public usage as per, or as defined in Section 7, and this is for 25 years. Here we are now 10 years into it, 15 years into it, and we want to change the priorities. Can we change the priorities? According to this, we cannot. Could we say, and I don't know if
I
it's...
thought there was a fact that said you could renegotiate anything in the contract with the county.
Okay, so we can renegotiate if both parties agree.
And I think that would be an amendment to the.
Is that in here? There's something in here like that now? No. Okay, so we need...
I mean, that's basic contract law that, I mean, I'm not giving legal advice. in my experience,
Yeah.
contracts are negotiated, renegotiated, and this is a county ordinance. Ultimately, it'll be applied that way. The ordinance could be revisited, I'm sure, at later dates. Whether in disagreement or not, I don't think it changes anything at the end of the day.
Look at section 23. It's called section 23 modification. That's why I said I'm on there, I thought.
Yeah.
The covenants may be modified by way of a written instrument mutually accepted by the parties hereto. So, yeah, okay. So looking at our next steps on this, are there other issues that we as a board need to look at this point?
Let me just stop you for
Okay,
one second.
please.
Actually, modification should be section 24. The numbering's off when you get to modification.
You're right, modification should be section 24.
And then everything else subsequent.
And then, yeah, the numbering just messes up. Good. So,
Back to 7, what are the timeframes on that? How far out can the sports groups reserve in the community? I mean, there's no timeframes, like you start reservations and you can do 11 months out or 12 months out or whatever. I mean, it's just kind of a wild west on that. I just think we need some.
Yeah, those are defined in our recreation program plan. I believe they're 1 year out that our youth groups can book. Now, it's just simply a change, but if the board wants to allow them to do 2 years out, 3 years out, it's just a approval of this board to update our recreation program plan.
Okay, and
I
then
mean, I think the understanding, we've been working with our youth groups for years now. We know when their spring season is going to start. We know when their fall season is going to start. We wouldn't book a huge economic impact tournament on a Saturday in March, because we know that that's when our youth programs are in there. Now, it wouldn't be unreasonable for the summer, when all of our youth programs are out, to have a tournament that says, hey, look, we need some overflow space. And it would make sense for us to book it for them, because you're bringing in revenue to help offset the expenses of that facility.
Right, I just don't know with the experience, because I mean, if they, with their power, if they come in and want something, I just don't want the kids bumped. So.
No, it does not give them the authority to bump. It's just if it's available and if it's open, then we have the ability to book it. We couldn't turn them away if it was open.
so said differently, if Experience Kissimmee wanted to plan something for 2021 and they need to do the planning now, we have some limitations. No, we can't book that. That you can book it after, whatever. You can book it tentatively, pending our timeline for our youth
If it
groups.
was a Saturday in March, my response to them would be, that's youth league play. We have top priority over that. If it's a Saturday over the summer in July, then I would say, let's look at booking it for 2021. If it's a huge economic impact to the community and brings in revenue, I think it's great.
How do you control that people aren't booking the field just to hold it in case they might want it?
Brian, I think you said, how do I control if groups are holding it in case they might want it?
Yep.
And we have to have payment to hold the fields. I don't think you should just.
Okay, so we're forcing money.
Yeah, I think you need to pay to hold. I've seen it so many times where one league will try and outbook the other league, and then they'll dump all their bookings towards the end. We don't allow that because we don't allow more than one league per sport. We've consciously thought that through to make sure we don't have competing. We just don't have the capacity to have multiple groups in town.
And what are the deposits for something like Experience Kissimmee?
Well, I think we need to talk through updating our facility rental application and working with the recreation committee to do that over the next couple months, and then determining what those fees are going to be.
I mean, is that going to be listed in the agreement though? Otherwise, they're
Not in this agreement. It'll be listed in our facility usage agreement though. So anytime, so your Experience Kissimmee, you call me and you say, I need the fields next year for July. We're going to send you a form, just like we would anybody that wants to rent the field. We're going to say, fill this out and get it back to us. Make sure we have your proof of insurance. Make sure we have everything that we're supposed to have to book for you. If they don't provide us everything that they're supposed to have to book through our rules, then they just simply wouldn't be allowed to book the field.
I mean, is there any harm with listing it in the agreement that there will be a form sent, that there will be deposits, that there will be proof of insurance?
My personal opinion is yes, it would be harmful. And the reason is that this is an agreement with the county. And we want to maintain as much flexibility as possible. We want to be able to operate within our own rules and regulations. We want to empower our recreation committee and from them to us. when we memorialize these things in an agreement with the county, now we're adding another party and another layer of review to all of that. I don't think you can get the protections that you're asking for at this level. This is, in my view, an agreement to get us the $2.1 million with the least amount of disruption by keeping the existing structure that we already had of usage for public and non-celebration usage. The more defined we get, the more specific we get, the more we lock ourselves into something that we can't foresee all the possibilities. So I think as a matter of statutory drafting, you want to keep it as broad as you can.
Yeah.
And also, when it comes to the youth sports market, the travel market, the economic impact sporting events market, I've been around it for a long time. My son's been involved and played in it. This complex really isn't conducive to hosting large tournaments. It's really going to be better suited for an overflow site, a couple games here, a couple games there. So I think your risk versus reward is really a good ratio here, because you're getting almost half of your dollars back in reimbursement, and I just don't see it being utilized overly for economic impact events.
So next steps. We have next steps with county and we have next steps with residents.
I think you need to go to the county first to make sure they're okay with our changes. We'll sit down with them. Once we get an agreement, then we can tell them it's all pending us going back to the residents and having a final vote of the CROA board. We have to have your vote, and then we have to have the county's vote, and then it deals.
If there's some things that come up through our resident discussion that then require another meeting with the county, again, that would also involve our attorney and then the county again.
Right.
So what does resident discussion really mean?
That's my question.
What would that mean?
I mean, I'll be blunt here. So with that board, I remember the meetings last year, and I'm seeing it here. I mean, listening to this conversation and having read this, I mean, I think this is a pretty darn good document. Nothing perfect. At the end of the day, for the leaders of the newspaper, sometimes you don't take votes. Sometimes you just say, hey, this is in the best interest of the residents. I mean, we got to inform them. But
yeah, I agree with Brian. I mean, I think it's instructive that Vaughn and I didn't have any comments on the document. I think the point here is that we're trying to get reimbursement of over $2 million. Let's just get the money. I mean, we've got the structure of the document. The implementation of this will have lots of opportunities for resident comment as to how we go through it. And I would say to residents, come to the Recreation Committee meetings. They are going to workshop specifically on this topic. They have been working on this for 4 or 5 months at least already. There's going to be plenty of opportunity for the community to weigh in. But when the community decided that they wanted these ball fields and we made the decision to go ahead and fund them, now let's get as much reimbursement as we can and then move to the next piece. And let's not try and load up on this piece with things that really aren't going to move that ball forward. No pun intended.
And it's not different than what you're doing currently through your K-8 facility usage agreement. I mean, you have the ability to rent those fields out to outside groups. You're still doing leagues first and practices first and all those things. So we're really mirroring what we're currently doing and just putting into the agreement for the.
And we've been public with having this on the workshop, and we'll have it, perhaps we'll have some timing, have it on our December board agenda, perhaps. We can.
Well, I think it would be good, David, like when you write your next letter, or you could even have the letter that goes in a Friday flash a couple times, we're getting, we're getting darn close with the county. Your board thinks it's a very good deal.
I'm happy to do a Friday flash. I think in terms of timing, I'm happy to do a more timely Friday flash rather than waiting for January.
Do we want to meet with the board or with the county first?
Yes.
With our changes?
Yes.
And then
I would suggest meeting with the county in the next week or two. I think that was Vaughn, Brian, and me, depending on travel schedule with you all. Brian? Next.
Yeah, no, I'm in Arizona, but in December I'm here.
Okay. Let's plan on that for as soon as you can get that set up. We will. Steve, thank you, Steve. Mike, at the microphone.
Thank you. A couple of things. One, I think you're all aware that the Orlando City Lions are going to be at Heritage Park. They're building a facility, the practice facility, a major investment in soccer. I would encourage Steve, you to get with the team and talk about possible synergies, and just be aware of what they're doing, because I think that could have a big impact. So they're planning on building in Lake Nona, and they announced that. They never broke ground. They scrapped it, and they're coming there. I'm very familiar with the team. Kay Rollins is a good person to reach out to. They do a lot of philanthropic stuff, too. She runs the foundation for them. But there's no doubt that's going to be a major investment. I sit on the Y board. We're talking about soccer there and becoming a Uber soccer club there, because it's just going to be a big, big impact in Osceola County. So I think that's something you should be aware of and be working on the side or parallel to this. Second, I understand of just moving forward and making the decision and everything else, but I don't think you lose a lot by just publishing a link on a Friday flash of this document, post it out there, and say, hey, if anybody has any comments, call Steve, send an email, whatever it is. I think then you've checked the box in terms of transparency and involvement and participation up front. To go and take it back to the county, and then maybe somebody has an objection or a better idea or whatever it is, why put yourself in that box? I don't think you need to do that. Probably nothing will come of it, but I think it's checking the box for transparency and serves the purpose of what you have tried to establish as the culture and the interaction with the community. Third, and I'll take questions if you want, I think I was listening, and so I'm hearing the different clauses. I've not seen the document, so I can't even talk with an educated view, other than I'll ask you, normally when you put partnerships together, the most important thing is to figure out how you unwind it when it goes sideways. Because about 90% of partnerships fail. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So I heard about the possible modifications. Both parties have to agree. I don't know if that clause goes on to talk about what you do in terms of a stalemate. Do you go to binding arbitration? Do you go to mediation? What happens there? More importantly, I would suggest that there's a termination clause in there, because we're talking 25 years. None of us can predict what is going to happen over the 25 years. And the termination clause would be something like, at any point in time, the community is allowed to buy back the access, and it's the unamortized portion of the $2.1 million. You just amortize the 2.1 over the 25 years. At any point in time, if it became untenable for us and we wanted to get out of it, we just then would have to reimburse the county. To terminate the agreement, we'd reimburse the county for the unamortized portion of that $2.1 million. If we were in year 12 and a half, then we'd own $1 million. But maybe never use it, but I just think it's good diligence to have something like that in place, because this could, who knows what could happen. And right now you're trying to predict the future and design this, and I agree with Jackson. You want it as loose as possible. You want it as undocumented as possible, so you then have flexibility. But I think you need that nuclear option that if it goes sideways, we pay back some money, whatever it is. But so my first question is there a termination clause in here at all?
There is.
And how does that work?
It's not great.
It's not.
I think it's a good point, and I think it's something we could certainly suggest to the attorney to put in. I think that level of an interlocal agreement that probably sets a template for those kinds of things, and within those parameters, we can probably do that. I think what you're suggesting, I doubt that the county would be opposed to our paying them back if we wanted to buy our way out.
Right. I think it's equitable and it's fair.
Yeah.
And
I think equitable arrangements would make sense. So
Yeah.
to me, it's certainly worth putting in there. And I think further to your point about letting the community see it and check off the box, absolutely. I mean, this thing has been out there in various forums for a long time. I think what we don't want to do, going back to a conversation you and I had several months ago, was let's just get the money. Let's move forward and not eat our own while we go through this process. And then make sure that we've got the input at the level where it's going to really matter, which is the actual funding or scheduling and putting together how we use the fields.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
So I'm going to make sure I have consensus from the board to post this online.
With Tom's, updating based on Tom's the attorney's recommendations?
Yeah, it sounds like I need to send it back to Tom to get a termination clause added in there first.
But it needs to be modified.
Modified section 12.
Right.
And then the other piece, Tom offered an option for the payment. And so do we want, he listed it as alternative, so, you know, when we finalize this with the county, it wouldn't be an alternative, we would have one or the other or some other. Should we just use his alternative?
I think their money's ready now.
Understand.
It's just a matter of, do we want to wait until we're done and just take it all
Well,
at that time? Or?
Yeah, and they were saying on or before March 1st, 2019,
Right.
2.1 million.
Right.
And then Tom's alternative, I was suggesting, how about something a little earlier, and then at the half in the, you know, because we're not going to be done March 1st.
Yeah, and I think
I don't see any reason to wait till March 1st. I mean, until later than that, though. Why don't we do January 1, February 1, March 1?
Unless we have to wait for something to be done.
They'll come back and tell us they don't like it.
Yeah, and I think that's part of that conversation with the county when we sit down with them, what makes the most.
So when we post one, shouldn't we have a single proposal?
I mean, is that the kind of, are you looking at feedback from the community of when you collect the dollars? You're looking at more probably the usage.
Yeah, it's more, they care more about the usage, but what, I think we should have a clean.
To expedite the process as much as possible. So I think we can probably take Tom's agreement, once he gives us the updated termination clause, post that, and then we can go back with the county and talk about when we want to.
And the updates for section 7 and 8.
Right. Right.
Current examples include, and then as defined in section 7, which
Right.
would be the language for section 8.
Right.
Is that okay? Are we at closure on this? Everyone feel okay? Any other input from our audience? I can't see it all the way in the back.
We're good.
Okay, good. Thank you. I hear, okay.
Brian, it's a huge crowd, hundreds of people.
Hundreds of people.
I got the figures.
We have
I know this Mike and who's the other person.
Be quiet. Be quiet.
David, I just have one thing, because I have to leave early. Can
Okay.
we move up the condo association liaison initiatives to below the Celebration 25 follow-up?
Sure.
Okay.
We okay with that?
Just want to put there. Is that all right, guys?
We okay to move on to the next item? Technology?
Yeah.
Technology Committee resolution.
So I sat down with Susan and Steve to go ahead and go through the technology committee and get this going, if we will.
Good.
The big thing that I looked at when we sat down was Susan actually showed me 2 resolutions as examples to go ahead and format them. And the format that I took was the one that I thought looked best. And the reason why, and I asked Susan, I said, what's the difference? And she goes, that's funny. She goes, because this one has been created by the board, and this one is created by the attorney. And for the sake of consistency, I said, the board's going to change every year. Let's go ahead and go by the attorney format, so that way it's consistent to all years moving forward. And that's my reason for taking this approach on this one. They do get reviewed every year, so this is essentially the goals that we have for the 2018-2019 year. It gives us a little brief timeline. It's brand new, this committee, so we're going to be learning, you know, when we have everybody together and we have those brains of what can we do, what's within the reach of that committee. So a couple things that we put in there that we've heard from the community are things like the 5G, things for green initiatives, and listening to the community and listening to what technology's out there. So it is broad. It's definitely broad right now. But I don't know if we have any feedback on that.
So my main concern is I looked at 4 other committees that we have, and the universal committee goals are identical on ARC, special events, and dog park. So what you have here under universal committee really belong, I think, in the 2018-19 goals and objectives. Because the overall committee goals are meet with the CROA board, provide monthly minutes, open lines of communication, solicit interest among the community, and arrange for a member of the committee to attend monthly CROA meetings. That's what universal means. And the only thing that was different was the covenants had something, had some slight difference, but virtually the same. So to be consistent with our other existing committees, I just think universal should be universal.
So you would move all of the bullet points under
Yes.
universal under the 2018-19
That is,
goals?
yes, or reframe them, but, you know, and I think your point, Kevin, is what we are doing with this committee is getting started and trying to figure out our scope. So that's the one thing. The second thing is, with all our committees, the chair is elected by the committee and is a resident, not a board member.
Correct.
So we have a board liaison that the board would decide who the liaison would be. And then the only minor thing is, I didn't know what this, we capture the vision of the community of the future. I mean, I didn't know what that.
So it's-
You got that from some early document, I
It's a
bet.
way that the community was originally, if you will, marketed.
20 years
Well,
old.
it was originally marketed, it was totally different. And I don't know if anybody remembers how it was originally marketed, and I don't think it's really
I don't know, Matt,
We
that's
were going
right.
to have dial-up.
Oh, well, we were going to have a lot of stuff. We were going to have a direct link to the hospital and stuff too.
But whatever, you can, the committee can define that.
Yeah, of course, and this is just to get it going and
That's
get that
great.
out there.
That's great.
One thing that I did want to focus on in our conversation when we were discussing this was other communities in the area and what they're doing. And I will say, Lake Nona is kicking our behind, specifically when it comes to what they're doing in technology in their community. And we just need to get going and see what we can do, because we're 20 years behind. And this is a cornerstone that we all have
Absolutely.
acknowledged needs to get some attention.
I think this is marvelous. I fully endorse it. I just want to see it consistent with the others, that's all.
The other ones that you didn't name, Susan, could you say, were they created by the boards or by the attorney?
Well, the attorney has certainly reviewed
They sign off,
everything.
yes.
I'm not sure, but some of them are very old that have been, I can go back and look 5 years ago and they're exactly the same as they were. So, you know, as we move forward, I think, let's get them all looking consistent.
Absolutely.
When we talk about March of
And
next year.
that may be part of your overall strategic focus, though, as you're deciding what you want to do long-term, and then what you want to delegate to committees, it may be time to just rewrite them all.
And it kind of goes back to what we've been doing is the contracts for any outside partner. We've been updating and getting consistency throughout all
Yeah,
documents. because There's
exactly.
been way too much different formats going on. And
Last
I
technical
think
question. 3 but no more than 5. Aren't most of our committees 5 and no more than 7? Or 3 no more than 7? Is there a reason for 5?
No, this was
It's just your
the
prerogative,
discussion that we
really.
have, that we had that
Don't,
thing.
are most of our other committees 7?
5 to 7.
It's hard to fill a committee with 7 people, it
Okay.
really is.
Do we want to limit it to 5? Have minimum 3 and no more than 7?
At 7, more subject matter experts. At 3 to 5, more nimble.
Or maybe nimble for this year? Let it be nimble for this year?
Let's see.
See what the interest is.
Well, the interest will be there.
Hmm?
The interest will be there. I mean, I appreciate what Kevin's done to put this out there and to force us to go back and revisit this
Absolutely.
cornerstone. I mean,
Absolutely.
I kid about dial-up, but, you know, back then, we were gonna be, you know, cutting edge. That was what, you know, let us all in here as one of the cornerstones. So I think revisiting that, a small nimble group that can come back and rethink that, when we get to the Celebration 25, I think it comes back
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
that viewpoint as well, so.
So as a next step, is this something that we can have on the board agenda if it's reframed a bit? Put the universal goals as universal
I'll
and,
defer to Susan.
I can reframe it this week based on the
Good.
feedback of moving the universal goals down to goals and objectives.
is that too much to try to tackle, listed this way?
It goes right to the attorney. We sat down, we discussed points. Susan was kind enough to send those points off to Tom, and he kicked this back.
Right. And then I'll make the universal goals the same as all the others.
Yeah,
all
just
the
just
others.
copy ARC special
Right.
events at Dog Park,
And then Kevin will be the board liaison.
as long as the board approves that. Any-
Listen, I'm going to point at other ones.
Yeah.
Anyone,
I don't think I approved.
does anyone have any concerns about that, Kevin included? Do you have any concerns with it?
No, I'll take this.
Okay, great. So Kevin will be board liaison, and then there'll be a staff liaison, and then the committee chair would be determined by the committee.
Right.
And so we'll make sure we have a call for membership.
Yeah.
And so if we circulate that, and we can just tighten up the goals and objectives, and we're good for 2019.
Once we get it approved at the December meeting, we'll post right away.
Absolutely.
We'll have it in the January paper.
And maybe soon on our new website.
If we get those things out, yeah.
Anything else on that?
So much on it.
One thing I would think this committee is gonna come back and ask pretty quickly is, okay, then where do we have available funds to implement solutions that may be identified? How are we gonna handle that question?
That's on you, Brian.
It's good.
Is it, well, in all honesty, is it coming out of our working capital fund? If we have technological funds, if we have, I mean, there's obviously fixes, which is an operating expenses, but if you wanted to do a real enhancement, is it going to come out of our working capital fund? I think we don't have to answer this today, but we have to start thinking about
The way
this
that
question.
we created the objectives was for the committee to go ahead and have us some information by June 30th, which would allow the conversation for the budget. We don't expect anything to happen in the 2019 budget. But the committee would come back and share what they'd be interested, just like any other committee does each year, and then we evaluate the budget from there. So this will not be touching expense-wise. I don't see real expenses coming out next year.
Do you think it's reasonable, is something you said is part of the committee's charge is to look at whether it's neighboring or other communities, looking at cutting-edge initiatives of them, and
Yeah, that's,
so I think that
No,
would
that's a good one.
get a lay of the land about what's, and also what's on the horizon by some technological folks out there. It's going to be an exciting committee. I think it's way overdue.
we just gotta get them here and listen to what
It'll be an
the techies say.
interesting process.
Yeah.
Be exciting. And other board members are welcome at the technology committee meetings.
Of course.
Of course. Good. All right, shall we move on?
Just one more
Please.
question. For this, if you get 10 people for 5 spots, have you talked about methodology of how you're going to select?
Well, I assume it would be the same way that we've done it in the past. We have all of the applications here, and we review them, and then make a decision about who we appoint to the committee.
We have a revised and more enhanced application.
Well, I know I've heard you talk about each board member appointing versus
it's
having them all
for
come,
history.
and so that's really.
I was actually talking in terms of a charter revision, because it's a more formal, bigger picture, so I didn't mean to imply that that would be my
For
thought about a
everybody.
committee.
It'll be a nice problem to have.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
All right, moving on. Information update processes regarding incidents. So this is when an incident occurs,
Yeah,
either on our properties or within one of our homes or condos or one of our parks. What do we?
Yeah, I want to just address a couple of things quickly in
Sure.
this topic. We've had a couple of incidents in the last couple of weeks of varying degrees of severity. And one of them included a sheriff's county report that named juvenile suspects. Another was a nuisance kind of complaint. Another was a little more than that. There are a couple things that concern me. One is, I don't believe that anyone in management other than Steve or Susan should be copied on those. I recognize that JR, for some reason, is on those emails and he has been the point of contact. I do not believe that's appropriate. These are safety measures. They are potentially privileged matters. And I think if you choose to share that with members of your staff, that's your choice. But I am very uncomfortable with those individuals being on these email chains. So I just start with that, number one. Number two is that with these various incidents, when they occur, I think we need to be very careful about the fact that we are a homeowners association and not a governmental municipality, and that we do not take the place of law enforcement, of protective agencies, or anything else. I mean, we're neighbors trying to make it a better community for neighbors. And I think we got to be really mindful of that with these incident reports. The legal background that I've got makes me very uneasy with the kinds of communications that are being sent out. Names are being added, information's being given out. I think we subject ourselves to some potential level of liability when we start communicating about those things. And so I just would like to see us be more cautious unless council tells us, and maybe we take this to Tom Slayton and say, what's your view? I'd be surprised if he'd say, yeah, go ahead, email each other about it, put it out there, do all of those things. I think these are management problems. You got somebody doing something in Lakeside Park, you should resolve that as best you can. If you can't, you go to the sheriff. If you still have a problem, then you inform us in general terms of what's happening. I'm very uncomfortable with the fact that we're getting detailed incident reports.
Well, that's complete opposite opinion of what past boards have given us. It has been, we want to know everything that's happening when it's happening. And
No.
yes.
We've always been very careful to say we're not police officers. We aren't trained to do this. At least the last 3.5 years I've sat here, I've never said, let's be the one to come and intercede, because it's not how we're trained.
I'm certainly not asking you to intercede. I'm making you aware of the situation so that you know what's happening. Because I've had numerous occasions where someone would call me and say, hey, this took place, why didn't you tell us about it? I feel like it's an obligation of management to make sure the board's aware of these situations that are taking place.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to strike a middle balance. A general piece of information that says there was an incident, it generally occurred this way, it's been turned over to this body.
Sheriff is dealing with it.
If you need more details, come see me or talk to me individually. But we got an email on November 12th about an incident at Lakeside Park, and it names the individual, and it's got detail, and it's got attachments, and it's been sent to a whole lot of people, and it's got statements and pictures. All of that's going into our email. It's all there for, public records, and I'm very uncomfortable with that.
Well, the board gave us direction at executive session on what you wanted to do with that, and as long as we're not changing that, we're still following that direction.
This board gave you direction?
Yes, during executive session.
On this item?
Yes, and it was that the attorney will only request incident reports from now on.
We did talk about this.
Yeah,
But
so I've given
not for
direction,
the-
we're not asking for them
Two different-
anymore.
That's a good point.
I'm lost.
Do that
We
again.
roughly resolved this. It, I think, stayed on the workshop agendas, and I think it should have been pulled
Well, I
off.
think part of this was the request that you all had working with the development district on them giving you a blotter or a regular update of what's taking place in the community.
So this item comes from recent drug bust.
No,
No.
No,
This-
No.
That's,
that item originally, it came from, yes, drug bust, we weren't
Yeah.
informed what's going on.
Right.
We wanted to see the police blotter in a reasonable amount of time. But the police blotter really doesn't describe in detail that Jackson's talking about. That's available, public record. My issue too is that if you link some of the incidents that occurred, we have had problems on our homeowner's side with these houses and stuff. I just was interested because I had a resident come to me and ask, had I seen a report? He said, I filed a report, and you need to know what's going on down the street here.
yeah, but that's why this was put on, because we didn't know that there was a drug bust.
Right.
Well,
Well, it's two
That was the
drug
reason,
busts.
or two of them,
Yeah, and
two drug busts.
what we've heard from speaking with Jerry in the past is that he'll do them if he's given direction from the development district. So the contract for him to his additional hours here in the community are through the development district. That's really a scope of that agreement. And I believe that you were going to ask Vaughn and Jack as your liaisons to ask that at the development district meetings.
We have asked for that. We've never received anything.
I don't know that, I know we used to receive those when I first got on and then it stopped. I just don't know that we need all that information.
So what is it that we want, what protects us and also protects
Yeah, what do you-
neighbors taking, Jackson, you're the
In some of the
neighbor.
incidents that we're reporting, the board's going to have to take action eventually if rules are being broken. And this is along the lines of suspending usage for some of the facilities.
But wouldn't that be done, Steve, under the board packet in a privately available piece, just like we handle covenants violations or ARC? I guess what I'm really concerned about is that an email that goes to all of the board members plus Susan plus JR that's got attachments, pictures, details, and names it's transparent. I mean, it's out there, and I'm not sure that that's, if that's what we said in executive session, I guess I went out for a cup of coffee or to the bathroom. I don't remember ever saying that I thought that was a good idea. I think there's a difference between that and the police blotter that Jack's talking about, or a general sense of these incidents. I just think you might be over-reporting here.
No, we were told to cease on any type of incident reports, and if we needed an incident report, it would be an attorney requesting the incident report.
Okay, that's what I thought. So why do we have a,
That's why.
so why do we have an email on November 12th that is in effect an incident report? That, I guess that's what I'm asking, Steve.
Is it the one where there was clothes being washed
Yeah.
in the pool?
Yeah.
No minors involved in that? It's a adult in that situation, and it's not a police incident report, it's an incident report from us.
Does it
giving you
need to,
example.
okay.
Do we need that level of detail?
Well, I mean, that, if the board doesn't need that information anymore, then we'll keep it amongst ourselves. But there's gonna be a time where you're gonna come back and say, why weren't we notified of this taking place?
But isn't the middle ground saying in 2 or 3 sentences, here's what happened, and then you have internally the incident report? Would that be the sufficient information?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I know I'm confusing things. There are 2 different things going on here, just for the audience and the public. There was an incident report regarding juveniles, and this board said, do not do that without attorney approval.
Right.
And
we're all agreed on
official sheriff's
that.
office.
official sheriff's
Right.
office report.
And we're all agreed on that, I think, at this point.
Yes.
I'm now talking about a further email that was sent on November 12th regarding an individual in Lakeside Park. And it's of a nature, it's of the kind of reports that we have gotten that are not dealing with juveniles, that are that are highly detailed, that I think are beyond the scope of what we as a board need to know. That's my view.
Right.
I think management is perfectly capable of resolving these things,
Right.
and you guys know how to handle it and should handle it, and God love you for handling it. But I just don't feel like we should have that information sitting out here in an open email thread. And to me, that's just not prudent.
Well, I think Steve is trying to keep us aware. I think there is confusion, so so you're saying don't let us know anything involving.
I think it's
minors
perfectly
and-
acceptable to say there was an incident at Lakeside Park with an individual unnamed. We are handling it. Here's the general status without the attachments, without
Yeah, just a lot of
the,
attachments.
just to be clear, there was a statement, there are 3 statements, there are 2 images, there's a PDF, there's a lot of documentation about this one piece of information, or this one event. All of that is discoverable. All of that is accessible through a records request. I would think the individual informed, or if, as part of this, might be at the very least unhappy or embarrassed. And maybe that's what we want, but from my mind, it's better to simply say, we trust management to do, it wasn't like you didn't know what to do. I mean, clearly you knew what to do and how to
Sure,
handle
but
it.
it's all still discoverable through a records request anyways. If someone comes to us and says, I need
Yeah.
all incident reports for the last 5 years, I have to turn them over. There's no way around that.
Well, I'd rather they be turned in that way than the fact that they've been circulated to board members and staff members.
So
That's just me. I'm-
informing with a brief
I can make
summary.
it work either way,
Yeah.
honestly. I mean, if you would
Briefer is
rather
better.
we keep all the details and just give you a general highlight of what's taking place, I'm okay with that.
Is the summary that briefer is better? Inform us of something that you think is outside the norm or egregious, and
Is it if action is needed by the board, inform, and you have your, just like a covenant situation, where here's the history, and now we need action from the board. So here's the history with this individual, here's the nonstop situations that have happened. But this was just to keep you monitored, and I think that's where the concern is. There's no action being requested.
Not
So
yet.
management, this goes back to let management manage. And if management needs help with something in the gray, or that final say, just like covenants would be, then you go to the board for.
But it also
that
can
final
tie
right.
into when you have to vote on something and you just get the information at the last minute before you vote on it. Do you have enough time to review it and make an informed decision? This is why I gave it to you while it was taking place. I just don't want it to come to a situation where you have to take action on it and you say, well, this is the first I've heard of it. Why are we just now doing this?
Well,
What
that's why we
action would we have
workshop.
taken on this incident?
I think eventually, if it doesn't get corrected, after our conversations with this individual, that you're gonna have to pull his pool access.
But you've already referred this to the sheriff.
The sheriff is working with them for multiple other things that are taking place in the community right now.
Uh-huh.
Does it require board to pull the access?
It
if it's
would, yes.
Other than wait, yeah.
So we would get a package, as Kevin described, that says, here's all the things that have happened, and here it is on the agenda, and it would come up for...
Recommended action.
Right.
I mean, I'm not trying to hamstring you. In fact, the opposite. I'm trying to give you the most freedom that we can to do your jobs without having to do this. I appreciate the candor of your email and the detail, but there are things in that email that I would prefer not be said in public, and an incident report wouldn't have said some of those things. And so I would prefer that we say less until we're at a point where we have to make a decision, to Doug's point.
I agree with it.
Treat it like a covenants thing.
Treat
Treat it like a covenants item. That's where I would go with it.
Anything else on that? How about shifting gears to something a little more forward-looking? Celebration 25 follow-up.
That's fine. Didn't you want to flip the...
We're going to do it?
Oh, no, we're going to do it after that.
After.
Thank you.
So the brief thing is, several of us, I don't know how many were invited, but several of us were at the Celebration 25 follow-up. Gloria from the foundation helped to orchestrate this. I didn't, walking in, several of us, I didn't know what was the agenda. I didn't know what was going to be covered, how it was going to proceed.
It's a great event.
It's a great event, a lot of history, and it's really looking forward. You know, how are we going to help maintain what was envisioned and create some new vision for the future? And I think the sense of, and others who were there can share also, but it was like, well, how do we keep this going? How do we keep this conversation going? And so I put it on the agenda so that we can, at least as CROA, talk about how do we keep the conversation going. It was an inclusive day with multiple entities, no one leader. Again, Gloria was very gracious and helped to organize it, but not own it. And I think that would be her statement of the day. I think you were there. You were there. Brian was there. I don't know that Jack was out. Jackson was there. And then a show of hands in the audience. About half of the audience was there.
Yeah, that's good.
That's pretty overwhelming. There were about, what, 50, 60 people there, would you guess?
It was sold out, yeah.
Yeah, let's
50?
say about 60, 50, 60.
I think it was sold out. It was listed as,
Whatever.
quote unquote, listed as 65. I think there were about 10 vacancies. But anyway, so the question is how to move forward. How to move forward.
Yeah, I think one of the questions is how does CROA help out as that process goes forward? I think the fact that we had as many board members there participating and contributing is a good first step. I'd like to see us continue to promote the activities of that group, to engage in what they're doing, to continue to keep management informed of what's going on. I think it dovetails really nicely with the strategic planning. When we get to our December 3rd meeting, is that right? I mean, I can see where there's a whole lot of overlap in the 25-year and our strategic planning. So I'm hopeful that when we do that meeting, we'll reference what we learned and heard from people in that process. And I'm sure as that process goes forward, there'll be more opportunities to participate.
I would agree. I mean, reflecting back on it, it was impressive. I do want to go and give a big shout out, not only because she's my neighbor, but KVT is a resident here in town, and she donated her time to get the community together in a very, very nice way. I don't want to say that I'm embarrassed at something that CROA didn't do, because it was that great, and it's something that really we should be doing. So to partner with the foundation and KVT and assist in what we can, because the information that we've received, I know individually, was priceless. It was information on where we were as Celebration, where we are, and then not to dwell on the current like so many do. It's what are we going to do to move forward? And there was a lot of things, I mean, events that used to happen in town,
Right.
things that really took part of our community that have gone away. And it was a lot of the same reactions. What happened to this? What happened to that?
Tell me more about
how
this.
did we
Yeah,
get
yeah.
here? And you see this room filled with residents wanting to bring this back. And I think the way it ended, Merrill ended up making a comment saying, what do we do next?
Yeah.
How do we bring back the celebration we all fell in love with? And there's nothing wrong with celebration today, but how do we bring back what we had and make sure we keep it for the kids
Yeah.
in 20 years from now?
Yeah. It was a nice spirit.
It was.
So I guess I would want to do more than just support it, because there's no orchestrating group. At the same time, so I would like to see some ways to institutionalize it without owning it, to be a partner with the foundation, CDD, whomever else is appropriate, but to help institutionalize it, but not take it away.
Yeah, I'd very much like to do that.
Yeah. So I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if it's a joint group or it's something that helps to sustain it rather than just letting it die. It was great feeling. We had 2 professionals who donated their time, who said they would be willing to donate their time again. Yeah, they said they would be willing to do it again. So that it was just a nice spirit for basically all day on a Saturday.
So I think Kathy, I did speak to her, and she's gathering the information and putting it into the format. There's a lot of handwritten things.
Handwritten notes and
So she's putting it all
comments.
together. Because one of the things was she ended up recommending the points or check off things that you agree with, and it was in the entire system.
Vision for the future type things.
I would, if the board is okay with it, I'd like to ask Kathy if she can send that over to us, and I'm sure it won't be an issue at all, so we can all reflect on it and revisit and see what priorities we need to as we develop our strategic goals for 2019.
I was to say, with that information,
If I might jump in just a little, I'm sure you all remember that I wrapped it up by saying that I thought, at the meeting by saying I thought CROA would probably eventually have to take ownership of this. And Paul and Gloria and others talked with me and they agreed. They wanted to participate, they want to be co-partners, but I think this thing will die if it's not institutionalized. I mean, yes, it's a wonderful way to spend a Saturday, and gee, we'll do it again in another year. If you know, it's no different than the technology committee we just talked about a little while ago. You either institutionalize these things or they don't happen. Right. So I think we either have to say, yeah, we're going to be the champions in partnership with CCD, in partnership with the Celebration Foundation and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, we're the ones that have a source of revenue and have funding and the ability to at least carry the conversation forward. So to me, we need to be realistic here. Either we want to support this and then get real about it, or we don't.
I'd love to take ownership of it, but I don't want to steal something. I don't want to steal someone else's thunder.
Exactly. But I think Brian's point is,
okay, you can
maybe we'll go ahead.
Paul and Gloria both told me they didn't want to run with it. Gloria especially was happy to get it started, and Paul did too. They wanted to stay involved, but I think they were scared to death they were going to get stuck running it because then you get into politics. I mean, we'll just be blunt. Then it becomes a foundation thing. You know, and half the people will say that's great, and the other half people say, you know, foundation's trying to take over the town again. You know, so I think we got to be realistic. I think people would be very open to a conversation.
So maybe we can institutionalize it. We can be a host home, if you will, to facilitate, and then identify CDD and Foundation as partners.
Yeah, I'd like to see us on December 3rd really start to move towards some formalized structure in which we integrate the 25-year process, either through a liaison or a small, nimble group, something that takes our resources, as Brian said, and makes that, gives some heft to it. I don't think it's likely that CCDD is going to carry the ball here.
No.
I don't think that the foundation particularly wants to, as Brian said. I think that leaves it to us, and it's appropriate. I mean, we are the Homeowners Association. We represent the core of the community, and it seems likely that ought to be something we should be doing.
So let's put that as part of it on December 3rd. And
it almost sounds like a great theme to your strategic focus next year.
Yeah.
25, or Celebration 25.
But it can also
Celebration 23 and a half, or
whatever makes the most sense.
Wherever you start counting, start with the manhole cover.
Well, but from my understanding, this isn't this isn't the Founder's Day celebration type feel.
No.
This is looking forward to what celebration looks like over the next 25 years, and it does fit perfectly into your technology committee resolution, into your strategic focus that you're going to talk about in a couple of weeks. It sounds like it can slide right in.
Technology was actually a huge, one of the larger things that I saw on the board. So thankfully we are in the path of taking that feedback in, and we're aligned with what the community sees. We see it as well. So we're going in the right direction.
I thought it was interesting. I don't know, I know several of us were at the event with Brent Harrington, the first town manager.
9 days ago.
Over Founder's Day weekend. There were a lot of things that Brent said that resonated with me, but one of the things that he mentioned was that a lot of the communities that were used as templates for celebration are now arcing into a 40-year, 50th year process. The Rouse developments and some of the others. Seaside is now, I think, at 40, 45 years. As we look forward to what celebration will be at 50 years, that process starts now. And that seems to be an important point of the lifespan of these communities, is that somewhere in the 40th and 50th year, they have to reassess what they are, where they're about. The fact that we're trying to do that in year 25, I think, speaks to the vision of the community, and I think it's a really important piece.
Good. Any further, please, Mike?
I agree with the comments, Brian's comment about institutionalizing and Jackson saying that, you know, some kind of a nimble group. I think I would call it a steering committee or whatever it is, but I think CROA should form it. So I think that's where you step in and institutionalize it. So you should pass a my recommendation, pass a resolution, form a steering committee for the 25th anniversary celebration. And I think, I only attended the morning part of the meeting, I think this is an opportunity to bring the community back together and refocus it on the future. Because we've had so many issues, we still have issues, so many fragments and fractures that have occurred. And this could be that bonding experience that could pull a lot together. So I think that committee looks like it has a member from every club in town. You know, the garden clubs represent the Veterans Club, the foundation, every single organization in town, every governing group, you know, CDD, Lexan, CROA, you know, just really think broadly and really bring a lot of people together. And then somebody put together some guiding principles for them, you know, what do we want you to accomplish? And then have that group report out periodically. But I think this is an opportunity, if we handle it right, to really pull the community back together and refocus on the next 25 years and drive it forward. And it can probably heal a lot of the stuff, potentially could heal a lot of the stuff that's out there. We might be able to get it on the table and make it a better place.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Nicely said. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the collaboration overall is always a healing process. I want to make sure we're not confusing it with what we're going to end up doing in 2021, which is the 25th celebration. Because that's when we look at our very first Founders Day picture, the homeowners are holding first Founders Day 1996. So this is more of a collaboration and leading us into the future.
Right.
2021 is a celebration of the past 20.
It's not about an event. It's more about collaboration in the future.
Yeah, it's a marker. It's a marker as to where we are in our community's development. The community started its development before the first residents moved in. That's different than an event, a year-long celebration of celebration, a big publicity, homeowners set of events.
Right, exactly.
It's a wonderful initiative, though. Just we want to make sure we're framing it properly.
I was also thinking of an idea of a resolution to help institutionalize it. Do we have a history, or do we have some examples of resolutions that are of this type, rather than a committee? Do we have anything in our?
I mean, we've had the educational task force, and that's probably the most similar to what we're looking at.
Okay.
That was to address the need and the problem, but we could.
Can you look at? Can I ask you to look at something and as a jump start, and then we can start to think about that, whether that's the appropriate way to go?
We'll see what
maybe something from other communities, or
and if we could just get a bullet points, if I could see the compiled data from that Saturday meeting, I think that would all help us to get the Really, we just, like Kevin said with the technology committee, we just need some bullets, and then we'll send it over to our attorney, and he'll get it all put together for us.
Well, we can do an initial, we can do an initial draft and.
You can, with resolutions, we have one or two choices, either the board can write it, or the attorney can write it. Management cannot, it's
No, okay.
considered an interpretation of
Okay.
law or governing document.
Let's communicate with the foundation, communicate with Kathy, see if, hey, we're
You're
signing you
gonna-
up for something.
You're gonna communicate with Kathy to
Do you want me to
get?
do that with you?
Yeah, I'll see what I'm getting in the mail, kind of a thing. It's
Okay.
that's it. But yeah, and I'll just ask her, hey, this is something that's
I'll
being discussed. Would
I'll
you
reach
be-
out to Gloria, if that's okay?
If that's the formal, yeah.
Is that okay? All right, anything else on that? Our next item is relocating the condo association liaison initiatives. And a grand entrance. We now double our audience, almost.
Is that something we're going to discuss now? That's
Yeah,
December
Debbie needed
3rd.
to discuss, she needs to
But it's
leave.
December 3rd is what's listed for our future.
Oh, we had adjusted the agenda?
We just bumped it up.
Yeah, but it's
Oh,
for
that-
December 3rd.
Yeah, we had moved that middle of last week, last
Okay.
Wednesday, we moved that one up.
Your tax amount.
So what we did with the condo liaison, a workshop or two ago, we decided to have a quarterly meeting with condos.
Yeah, I'd like to create a resolution that would mirror what we're ending up doing with technology and some of these other groups, in which we formalize a steering committee, I like Mike's language there, a steering committee of condominium representatives to meet on a quarterly basis to share their concerns with us and for us to communicate with them. So my request would be, if the board agrees, to ask management to draft and ask Tom to review a resolution that will simply formalize this so it exists beyond this board.
Who might be, when you say condo reps, who might that be? Would that be managers, elected board, both?
Yeah, I think the way that it probably would work out is that each condominium would be invited to have one or two members, one of whom be a manager and one be a board member.
That sounds good.
That they would designate to attend. I think one of the things that we saw at our most recent Comcast meeting is that we had, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, I think we had 3 or 4 people from Artisan Park Club condos who were there, none of whom were on the board, none of whom were in management, and who were there because they didn't know what their condominium was doing. We need to have those managers and board members there because it's their responsibility to go back to their owners and communicate with them, at least in my view.
So how are you going to put some teeth behind this? The idea is a fine idea. So we know from recent emails we've seen that they can't even get board members to talk to managers and managers to talk to residents. I mean, my question is, how can we legally put some teeth behind this?
I think the big thing is just creating a network for these CROA members. And when I look at it that way, if, for example, a town center board member or manager could share experiences with their condo defects or their litigation or the attorneys that they've gone through and they've worked with and they didn't want to work with. It's a networking for when you have issues happening in other associations. Consider it our own CROA, if you will. It's our own celebration, networking, because we all live here. What happens at Spring Lake, what happens in Artisan does affect somebody in North Village. It will happen. When celebration is shown on the news, it hurts all of us, even if it's something not in our control. So if we can at least, as CROA, offer a space and just put behind, here's a date, feel free to come in, discuss. This is your show. We're just providing the space and the networking opportunity.
Yeah, and what's our legal concerns on this, like, as far as looking like we're almost becoming responsible for their decision, like with Comcast. We can't make the contracts with the association, so I just want to make sure we have there's that fine line. We want to help, but we can't tell them what to do.
We want to facilitate discussion.
Right, but not cross that line? Like, what would be
Can
management on this? Yeah.
can I lay out an example, though? I'm up here in Baltimore, staying in our condo. There are 5 buildings, soon to go to 7. We have a homeowners association. We have a condo board. We have all the things, just like you have down there, or we have one in Florida. But everything gets communicated via email from the homeowners association to everybody. Everybody gets the minutes. Everybody gets the agenda. Everybody gets all the other documentation. The board does the work and everything, but it was structured in such a way that there's 100% communication, so at least people are seeing things. So I guess what I'm saying is, if the model could be built here, if we were at least communicating with all, if we just had a condo email distribution, that would go to the manager, the directors, and all the residents of the condos, then at least we're facilitating communication.
Yeah, I agree. I think to Debbie's question, we don't have any legal authority. I mean, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. We don't have any legal authority over condominiums. Condominiums live in celebration, and the state of Florida, in its wisdom, has decided to make condominiums wholly separate entities responsible only to themselves and governed under a completely different set of statutes than we're governed under. What that means is that we've got condominiums that some are active and have their boards of directors, and they do their work, and they take advantage and communicate as Brian has described. And we have other condominiums that haven't had a vote for a board of directors in a decade. We have condominiums here who refuse to communicate with management or with CROA or with any entity. We have condominiums that we've had to go to litigation with to resolve items, some of whom have participated, some of whom have resisted. We have condominiums that don't have, frankly, free and fair elections. We have condominiums that operate as monarchies, basically. And then we have some that are very democratic. So it's all over the board, and we can't control any of that. But what we can say is that we are a group of neighbors trying to help our neighbors. And one of the ways we help our neighbors is by saying it doesn't matter if you live in a condominium or a single-family home, you are still our neighbor, and we want you to know about what's going on in the community. We want you to have access to the programs and the services and the wonderful things that make Celebration great. And we can't do that on our own. We need the help of your condo board. So we invite the condo board and its management to participate, but we cannot make them do anything. And I don't think it should be viewed in any way that we have more authority than that. But at the end of the day, and then I'll stop, at the end of the day, when there's a structural defect in a condo like we saw potentially come up last week, that is going to ultimately be the condo's responsibility, but as we got emails and communication, it's clear that our neighbors think it is our responsibility to resolve their problem in the condominium. And that's the difficulty that we face on an ongoing basis.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I think is really great about this is it's about building a relationship so that if XYZ condo in town has a problem and needs to know who can I turn to, because I will tell you, as somebody who's involved in CAI, the condo boards are not involved at all at any level. So, if they need to know, well, what kind of person should I go to for this? We can help them with that because we, CROA, have a lot of facilities, we have a lot of green space, we have a lot of things that we manage. And while we're not responsible for just the drywall out like they are in their facilities, we have facilities that we do maintain that. So I think that the relationship side of it is going to be the side that really, if we can build that relationship, those managers will be better managers, the board members will have a place to come to say, hey, I've got something I'm facing, what do you think?
Well, and it's not necessarily teeth. I think it's more positive pushing in the right direction. And when residents call and say, well, what are you doing for the 1/3 of the community that are in condo associations? The answer can simply be, we do not have the authority to make the decisions that your boards do for your association, but we do have the ability to facilitate conversation at a higher level and to help share resources and those types of things that can be shared. So it really is, I think if maybe like if you build it, they will come type mentality, and putting the positive out there and hoping, because while we only have 3, 4, or 5 condo associations show up, maybe knowing that this resource is available, more will start coming from that.
But you're also communicating to the residents, to the extent we can, of the condo associations, to engage their own management and their own board.
Exactly.
So a year ago, and I don't know if this is part of a potential quarterly discussion or beyond that, the workshop done in this room called Anatomy of a Leak.
That was Jack's initiative,
That was-
wasn't it yours?
Right, right. And was,
And Tim Swisher, yes.
and was, to that, were condos invited?
They were,
Okay.
all 11 condos
Okay,
were
so-
invited.
So what I wonder is if an event like that would be an appropriate complement to a quarterly meeting? And so it's educational, informational, free?
I mean, one of the.
I mean, it was tremendous, it was a tremendous discussion.
Steve did a presentation for lifelong learning on cutting the cable cord.
Excellent, another example.
That was, like, by all reviews, remarkable.
Yeah, both people who were there reported.
It's just like this.
Both of them. Oh, it's a little larger than today's audience, just a little.
But that would be
It
a
was an
perfect
excellent
example.
presentation.
That would be a perfect example of the kind of
Yes.
resource that we could provide to condominium owners as they start to deal with Comcast in January and February.
And potentially, I don't know that that was taped, was it recorded?
It was
No,
not. but
we get to
we
do it
what
again.
we can.
We could do it again.
live.
We could do it live and record it and make that available
And put it on.
through your
internet.
Comcast account.
Might have to move it to the Great Lawn just because of the popularity. But
I don't know that it's large enough.
I'd like to touch on one thing that you just reminded me of, and then I want to go back to the condos. When it comes to cutting the cable, and when it comes to Comcast cutting it for us, does Covenants have anything when it comes to those little antenna things that go in windows and things like that? Because I think we're going to see a spike in some things, and I just want to be ahead of it and make sure
Are
we
you talking
know.
about that flat device that
Yeah.
that looks like a.
Get rid of the
It's an
seals,
antenna.
because if
Like a
that cable
spaceship?
is cut, you're going to see a lot of those happening. So I just want to be ahead of it and keep those in mind to make sure we have a plan.
Well, they need manufacture some in the shape of shutters.
We'll make some impossible method that they're allowed.
we can make it
Well, it could be a big cell.
But we'll give it to the technology. So
Leave that to the
the
committee.
second thing, back to the condos. For communicating and inviting, I learned in my own experience that the emails that you may have on file are not all up to date, or the ones that are communicated with. I learned this on the town center side, because I try to keep things very separate. I really, truly, and it's difficult, but I do. And so I understood that emails were going to town center management regarding the Comcast situation. We go ahead and we have a conference call, and I say, hey, I haven't seen this on our agenda to discuss this on the town center, and they say, what are you talking about? So they were never informed of this.
Well,
And
let me just, if you don't mind, I
don't wanna
asked
concentrate
the
on it.
manager, though, what email should I be using? Because this is the one I've been sending it to, and I never got a response from that, so.
So this ties back to what is my actual concern. I'd like to make sure, and I think I said it once before, if we send an email out, let's get an RSVP, if you will. And if we don't get any response, let's try to follow up. And listen, let me know, and I will knock on doors and ask what is the appropriate, I'm not asking for you to do the runaround, but I just want to make sure that the emails and the invitation is actually getting to where it needs to go. So I know there's contacts in town that I can talk to that have just about all of them. So we'll make sure you have them.
Yeah, and I would say that the staff has gone above and beyond to try to communicate things. One of the main, a serious problem is when a call comes in off hours, either on the weekends or at night, and it's a condo leak. I mean, all they can do is give the information they have to contact for the condo association or for management. Those people, if they're not there, they don't respond. It still comes back to you guys 2, 3, 4 times. Or who lives above and they're out of the country, what to do, and you don't have necessarily the contact. It's tough. I don't know how you resolve that.
I think we need to try to take the initiative and get the information and provide it to CCMC, so that way their, after hours call number They can take out the file and say, I'm sorry, that's not our area, but you're in this complex. Here's the information that we have. Boom.
That's what they do.
That's right.
Yeah,
But
but
it's not accurate.
it's not accurate or.
So that's what I'm saying.
or it's-
It's as accurate as the condo association give us. And we just 2 weeks ago went back and reached back out to all of them and updated what we have. And again, I followed up with the person that said, well, I didn't receive it. And I said, well, this is the email that we've been sending it to all
So we have
along. Is there a
11,
different
is
email?
that the right number?
13.
How many, 13?
13.
And how many are you 100% confident that you
We
have?
get
their
about 5 or
communication?
6 back every
So
time.
we got half. of
Every
them.
time.
Okay. So the other half, let's try to focus on, again, I will
I
work
would
with
really
you.
like, I made this
to make
proposal
sure.
before, I'm sorry, Jack, I know you're going to say something.
No, go ahead. I'll finish up with.
Okay. I made the proposal before, and we had decided to wait a bit, but I would like management to literally get somebody in the NEV and go
Yeah.
to each condominium or each condominium property, and if they have to do the equivalent of posting the 99 Theses, post something on the door that says, we need your contact information. It is a necessity for safety purposes. And let the residents see that that's there. Because I don't think the residents would be happy if they knew that their condominiums refused to communicate with management.
Right. I think that's reasonable.
I would just like to tail on one thing. You know, about 10 years ago, when I started looking at the documents for statutes and stuff like that, when we're building the changes to our charter, you know, our charter originally had voting members and stuff like that, which was not very successful. So we modified that to a quorum and a threshold type thing, which seemed to work a little bit better for us. And I would like to actually come up with some kind of a template to be added to these other condos charters that would allow them to function without having to go to 50+1%, you know, in order to make to vote for budget changes, to vote for any of their stuff, to have annual meetings without having to be restricted like that. I know this is a push, but I'm just saying, most condos associations, they fail because they can never get
They're set up for
the simple majority. And we gotta come up with a better solution for them.
But they would be responsible for changing that.
They would have to do it, but if
But
we
you can
came up
provide
with the template, that's just add this to
Yeah,
your
that's good.
document, you know, this is a workable thing to do, you might be able to get a little better participation as far as responsible managers, responsible boards and stuff like that. And replacing people on
I think it's a
boards.
great idea. And I think, to go back a little bit to what Brian said earlier about putting teeth behind this, we know that we've got a condominium now that notices were filed by the county for structural defects. I think this is the time for management to contact that board of directors of that condominium and invite them to come to town hall to meet with us to talk about what the status is of that. Now, they can refuse to show up, but I think we need to continue to push that we
That's
want to
fair.
have information to be in a position to help assist. And I think, as Susan said, we've been through construction defect litigation. We can share ideas that we have learned. We can make resources available. We can introduce them to the appropriate legal and engineering companies that they could consider. But I don't think we should just let them linger out there and hope that their board knows what to do in this situation. I think that's dangerous, and I'm not anxious to have that happen there or anywhere else.
Share the resources and the insights that we have, and then among one another, with them among one another.
Brian, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm perfectly fine. I'm of the opinion we need to start getting tougher with the whole situation.
So
We need to start getting what?
Comfortable?
tougher.
Oh, tougher.
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 So here's the actions.
More assertive.
Let me make sure that there's consensus on these 3 action items that you'd like management to take. Work with the attorney to build a resolution for steering committee, get together, whatever we want to call it,
Yep.
for the condo associations. With each condo associations having a manager and a board as their members. And then drive around and ask for condo contact.
Yep.
Make sure we leave something at each condo association so that they're aware.
Some
Are
are
we-
off-site, right?
Well, we have.
But don't they have to legally post notice in a space for their meetings?
They sure do.
So every single
So you just
condo,
post.
so it might take a month or 3 months or whatever it is, but just keep
Well, I don't know if we
sending
can-
our team
I don't know
around
if we can
and look.
post stuff in their.
That's what I'm saying, I don't think we can post, but we can keep an eye out when they post something and our team could take a picture of it to get the information.
I'm perfectly comfortable with us taping a notice to the
They're not.
glass that says, "Hi, folks, your friendly CROA would like you to know that we're here."
It's called trespassing.
Yeah.
So the third item,
Well, it may turn them off from wanting to be involved in this,
Yeah,
but we can
I'm
certainly try around,
I'm
knock
just
on
showing my
doors.
frustration. No, I
Try to find
recognize
that.
calmer heads will prevail.
Okay, and then the third was to request that Spring Park Terraces Board meet with CROA Board in a public meeting.
Yeah.
right, that's fine. And we'll put this for a quick update on the next workshop agenda, just to keep
See if
this
we
alive.
have
Keep this
confirmed
alive.
Contacts, at least if we have confirmed contacts at that point.
Yeah.
And then if not, give me a call.
Just keep-
I'll see what I can do as well.
Do you need to check with Tom before you do any of that? Tom's-
No, I don't think so.
For the first one,
We're gonna reach
resolution.
out to them for the resolution anyways, but we'll see if there's any.
And there's some content items that we talked about here.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to get Steve doing that.
Yeah.
presentation. That would be great.
Anything else under that one? Can we move to equipment investments? I see Todd here. Is that coming from Todd or from Susan, or?
Well, I think Brian had said we wanted to discuss it, and
Right.
I'm not sure this is the time to discuss it, but geothermal, the irrigation, the sidewalk cleaners, all of those things that we were looking at.
Right.
We don't have anything scheduled to spend for 2019, so I don't see why it can't be postponed until we're further into, maybe with the new board.
It may make more sense to talk about this with your strategic focus and what technology comes up with and those types of things, and just look at it from a bigger picture.
Can I just jump in for a second?
Please.
On the irrigation, we had a meeting last spring. Have we heard back from the guy?
Yes, we've been talking to him back and forth, and,
We have. This is Todd. In fact, I have a meeting with him tomorrow to discuss, with Jamie Hahn from Weathermatic, to discuss flow meters. If we would just go with the system that they originally had spoken about, it would not really improve that much upon our existing system. We wouldn't be able to see how much water we were using and really get that reduction in cost. So flow meters are very important to have on individual areas so we can see what's flowing. The system can work as it's designed to shut down zones and move on to the next zones if it senses that there's irrigation breaks. Otherwise, it would just be new equipment compared to the same equipment that we have now. So, once we get that,
All right, so
go ahead.
you have a meeting tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yes. And that's to discuss the
Okay.
cost of flow meters and the number that we need so we can get a final cost on what a new Weathermatic system would be.
Are you looking at?
Okay, then I'm happy with you. I'm happy with you having your meeting tomorrow. Sorry to cut you off. And it would be good to figure out if this is logical or logical for them and hang forever. And if you need 2 more meetings, great. Send an email to the entire board so at least we can know what's going on with that. The other one, the sidewalk cleaner. We had a resident
Can we
who found that had
Can we finish up on irrigation?
The only thing I was going to ask, are you asking about SmartLink? They have SmartLink with Weathermatic?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that was in the original plan.
So is that the one that senses based on the weather?
It's that, it's
Based on what-
also, it's a control that.
Yeah, I'll give you a
access.
quick update. Right now, we use Maxicom through the CDD, and they control our irrigation and when it runs, and we have input on that, but their system, controls our irrigation. We wanted to get away from that, have better control of it, a better reporting process through this new system, and each individual controller that's out there now would just have a new one sitting next to it and switch the wires over and off we go. Was the original plan, but it's not that easy because the CDD doesn't have flow meters as well. So that's where we have to look at adding those.
And the other issue is the billing that comes from these waters, because
Correct.
we get some weird spreadsheet of assumptions of what it costs us, so we need to know, it could go two different ways with this. You know, we're doing the right thing,
Or
and
not.
we will be paying for what our fair share is, and there won't be a question anymore, and that could be a really good thing, and that could also drive the budget completely off.
Right.
So we have to.
But it's real.
I mean, but I
It's-
think we're doing the right thing.
It's our due,
We're
it's our
paying
due.
a fair
Yeah.
price.
Plus, we're pushing the whole technology advancement.
Yeah.
And is there any discussion with CDD about doing something with their system?
I've talked with Russ to make sure that it's not going to interrupt how they bill us, and it would actually be an improvement upon that. I don't know that they're ready to scrap MaxiCom.
That's where I'm going.
Right, but it would probably be a, hey, let's see how it works out with CROA and
Oh,
then
okay.
move on.
See if we can work together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Brian, you were moving to another one?
Sidewalk.
Sidewalk?
Yeah, on the subject of the sidewalks, I would like us to continue on that conversation. I understand CCTV scrapped it in their great budget crisis, but I think there's value in considering it and revisiting with CCTV. But, I think it would make the community look a lot better, and I think, especially if they're doing the sidewalk sweeping on a less frequent basis and everything like that, and less trimming of trees, it'll help the community look better.
So continuing that conversation with them?
Yes.
Is that something that you want us to research further and further
You had
than what
one
the
vendor,
CDD?
you had one vendor.
Actually, we have two vendors.
Oh, two vendors?
Yeah, I think we know the product, we've seen it demonstrated, we know how much it costs. I think now it's just a point.
Well, actually, I'd like to explore a little further, because the second vendor that had the cyclone, that's still too wide for our sidewalks, especially for people who have overgrown landscaping in the sidewalks and stuff like that.
Right, and it left a gap that would have to go back
We need to
manually.
find
then.
some of the 48 inches, whatever it is,
Well, it sounds like there's the consensus here, there's a lot of heads nodding in that direction. So this vote doesn't seem that difficult. My experience working with.
The other way.
I'm going the other way.
Okay.
And I'll get there in a
More
minute.
difficult than I thought. But I think to get the other board, the Development District Board, it's gonna take some briefing of each board member individually. So it might make sense to pick a liaison that you want to represent CROA, if that's the direction that CROA wants to go, and start having conversations. You can't meet with them all at the same time, you'd have to brief them each separately.
Yeah, but I'm perfectly happy. I mean, I know Paul Collins very well, and other people know other board members very well. We can start that conversation. I'd like to get Jack said he thinks we need more research. If Jack has got the capacity to help lead with some of it, I think that'd be great. I think we push this forward, because otherwise CCDD will let it kill under its own death, and I don't want that to happen.
The one thing I'd like to, if we're reaching out and discussing this, I'd like to see if we can bring this up to covenants and ask their opinion on how things will be enforced, because we have the checkerboard effect right now, which is what we're trying to resolve, but the checkerboard's gonna change direction, and it's going to be going up to the house and to the street, because that sidewalk's not going to be included. So what's going to happen is we're gonna have a nice clean sidewalk, but then the entrance to the house, the entrance to the street, I wanna know, how are we going to address the full picture?
I think it's a fair point, because the governing documents assign the responsibility for cleaning the sidewalks to the homeowners. And once the homeowners don't have to do it anymore, they're gonna say, well, why is it my responsibility now when you have a community-wide sidewalk cleanup?
Yeah, I'm
Which
having
they're
a
gonna be
challenge
wondering.
with,
It's just the same.
it sounds
as-
great and it's awesome, but
I mean,
It's
it
the
feels like
same
we're
as
taking
maintaining your
hours.
home, though. You still have to maintain your home. Everything from the sidewalk in is your responsibility.
I can just see people stopping doing it though completely if they say, hey, look,
and
What did you
it's not
do
just
about
that, it's this, the purpose of this, from what I'm understanding, is to get rid of that checkerboard effect.
Right.
This house is pressure washed and this house
Consistent.
isn't. You're still gonna have that issue. It's still gonna happen, it's just going in a different direction. So it looks nice looking down the street this way, but individually, unless everybody pressure washes the same month in the town, the sidewalk cleaning happens.
Plus, aren't we
I'd just like to
taking-
defer
yeah.
to management and that committee to let us know how they would address it.
well, management would do like we do now. We would send reminders, make sure you're cleaning your side, and it looks like we would just be, and then we would, as we go out, we'd see it the first time, we'd send an email, we'd see it the second time, we would go to the letter, and so on and so forth. Which again, I don't think it solves the checkerboard, because different homes have different variables of why their sidewalks look the way they look.
Yeah, I think there's an unintended consequence that's potentially happening here, and that is that we do the sidewalks, let's say under this proposal, as somebody that doesn't do a lot of home maintenance for himself, I would hire a vendor. And I'm not sure that a vendor would be interested in just doing the 2 feet of sidewalk from from my front door down to the clean sidewalk,
Right.
as compared to doing my entire property. We may have a situation inadvertently that we create in which people really find it harder to get those other pieces done versus the full piece. If there's a solution, a technology solution that would do more than just clean the sidewalks, but go further, then maybe. But at this moment, I can think of a lot of things I'd rather spend our money on than just cleaning the sidewalks and leaving other pieces undone. I'd rather see us get trees trimmed. I'd rather see the CDD do their job. But I'm still reluctant to believe that this is the primary responsibility for us.
I think we're stepping out of our bounds. I think we're taking on an expense the homeowners have been paid for in the past, and then we're adding it to our agenda, and then it's going to create more problems. So why don't you just do these 2 more than up to my doorstep, and then what about my porch?
How about a longer front doorstep?
Yeah, and then it's still going to be uneven because we can't do the entire, some areas in the community I know that are very moldy, we need to do more often. If you live in certain areas of town, some are in the sun. Why am
Well, let me ask this. Is it possible to privatize this kind of a product? In other words, that the vendor or the creator of this product would come in and individual residents could contract with them if they wanted to do their entire property? Or does it have to be a management, CROA-run project that says we're going to do all the sidewalks, but that's all we can do? In other words, the guys with these machines, can they be hired to come in and do more than just one section?
I don't know if they could go up to your.
I don't think machine would work very well on making that left, that turn up that sidewalk. It wouldn't work, and it's certainly not cost.
So it's a municipal product, really, only. Is that right?
Yeah, I love the idea. I fear, and we're also talking about a partnership with the CDD. That's a whole nother topic. Then you have the labor that operates it. You have when something gets damaged, who pays for it, whose insurance kicks. It's just, there's a lot, and I'm all about it. I think it's awesome and it's cool, but I don't just want it to be a toy that we spent all this money on, and
2 years later, it's defunct.
So,
Yeah.
if we can figure all that out, then yeah, let's go for it. So,
Yeah, to me, the issue is a safety one, which is where I would like to see covenants be more aggressive because of slippage with the dirty sidewalks, moldy sidewalks. To me, that's safety. And I know there was a call for months to clean up before Halloween. That's a year-long call.
But that's not, we address individual homes for
No, that's
individual
it's
violations.
yeah, I'm
That
talking
was
about,
just a community-wide
Right.
approach to trying to
Right.
get everything cleaned up for Halloween.
so to me, the purpose wouldn't be, for me, not about checkerboard,
Could you
but more
create-
about safety.
Yeah, could you use this machine on the major roadways, thoroughfares, on Celebration Avenue, on Celebration Boulevard, on
The current machines,
Water Street?
the ones we saw, the Cyclone, actually does have nozzles that could be used for cleaning curbs as well.
So
So
if we
one
took
pass.
if we were to acquire this equipment, could we have a more restrictive use of the equipment for the more public common areas and less of a focus on going back into individual streets and doing homeowner property areas? In other words, that we stay on the big
So
thoroughfares.
maybe it's big sidewalks and all curbs.
Let-
Maybe it's
Is that-
curbs. too.
I'm just asking. I don't
Let's
know.
talk about it this way. All the curbs belong to the county. They're not CDD, they're not us.
Right.
So we're doing the county a favor because they would never clean them anyway.
Right.
The sidewalks don't belong to us. We are responsible for maintaining them, but the CDD still owns those things. The only thing we're trying to do is beautify the community.
Yeah.
Okay?
I get that. I'm just saying, with beautifying the community, would it have an impact if we took the major thoroughfares in town that most people see and say, let's get those cleaned up as a standard, and then encouragement beyond that, but that we use this equipment for that purpose. There are enough big roadways in town that are there. I don't know. I'm just trying to find some way that we improve
I think
without getting into the business of being street cleaners.
I think there'd be some argument on which are the major ones and why are they
And
doing mine
I would
and not
charge you
yours?
selectively choosing
Here's
is
like
like a
enforcement.
nightmare.
Hold on, here's a numbers question. Todd, how much, or roughly do you guys believe, how much do we as CROA spend annually on pressure washing for our, not buildings, but I'm talking our surfaces that this would apply for? And the reason why I ask that, if the dollars make sense to go ahead and what you spend on that, then I would say, all right, here's your toy, it's working. But apart from that, and then if we can use it elsewhere, we can try. But if that number doesn't make sense.
I'd say we spend on average 28 to 32,000 a year for pressure washing.
Through a subcontractor.
Does that include the building stuff too?
That includes the buildings, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what about just on sidewalks?
It's hard to break that
It's-
down.
But it's a lot less.
I've got the numbers, I'd have to pull them all out and
Yeah,
get
but
back
that'd
with you on
be
that,
10,
but,
20,
how much-
you know, your
that's
return
not-
on investment, you're looking at probably, what was it, 5 or 6 years?
Yeah.
But then, how long does the equipment last? Does it last
Maintenance, and
7 or 8
including
years?
the labor to operate
Yeah,
that
labor.
equipment.
Yeah, it's,
You're
there's,
still spending 30,000 for the labor.
right.
Yeah, but add CDD into that too, and their common property.
Right.
I think they probably do as much or more than.
They do a lot more than sidewalks than us.
But they're cutting street sweepers, you know, so I just don't
Well,
see that being
hold on.
an actual relationship
Hold
happening.
on, about street sweepers. They're gonna restore that in the budget. Okay?
They are.
Yeah, the street sweeper, they got rid of the guy because he was doing a lousy job, but there's still gonna be a contractor street
That's an
sweeping.
understatement.
Come on, you move some leaves from one place to another.
Huh?
No water.
It's dry.
The guy,
50% of the leaves.
the guy was, I mean, it was just one asshole, but,
So,
you know.
I think the issue that was created is we do such a great job with our pressure washing in our parks that it makes everybody else look bad, but we're setting that community standard.
Nice pivot.
Tony?
so where are we for now on the sidewalk cleaner? It sounds like there's too much,
I think we
it's
got
too
4
much.
now. I mean,
I think I aired most of my concerns.
I think we're 4 on a no, unless I'm reading you wrong.
I'm not
I
convinced.
just want to know how.
I'm not convinced at this
we address
point.
those.
Yeah,
I'm not convinced,
I'm not either.
in terms of our return on investment.
Well,
I mean, I think we got 4 that aren't convinced. That's what I'm reading.
what I'll do is, you know, I like that technology side of, you know, equipment and stuff like that. I'll keep my eyes out and as things progress, and
Right.
if something jumps out that can save us money and get the job done, I'll certainly bring it to the board.
Does it make any sense at all to know if the development district is, if they want to get involved in this and then go
Yeah,
from there?
absolutely.
Because you're asking the development district to take on a responsibility that's, there's no such authority or governing document that requires them to do this.
Yeah.
So, it's the same question that you're asking yourself, so it's paying for a higher level of service in the community.
If they're interested and we want to couple on it, that's a possibility.
I mean, I'd be interested in owning it outright, but having an agreement where they could use it. I think that's going to get a little difficult to both own an asset. So I think it's one party needs to own it, and then the other one has an agreement for use at X dollars for the lifespan of that equipment.
But does it make sense if they own it in?
That might be the way.
That might be the way.
Perhaps our
Maybe they own it.
30,000 or whatever we actually pay for services, we could say, hey, you buy it, we'll use you.
Right.
We'd rather keep it in the neighborhood.
Right, maybe,
But
Shared cost.
yeah, I would support that,
I think that's the path.
depending on how that plays out.
I'd rather them own it for liability.
Can we move to the third item, geothermal? Under equipment investment? Todd?
Well, we definitely know how much geothermals cost.
So we know
And
that.
We've done those before, so it's just a matter of, do we want to find the dollars? and
So
where do we find
looking
them?
into our longer-term plan,
That's, you know, put the information out there where you guys go with it from
What
there.
does not have geothermal right now?
East Village, North Village, and Spring Lake.
See, I'd rather put them up there. I think, boy, if we have something that works, it's our area,
it
It's
and
environmental.
it's,
extends the life, it extends the usage time.
It does.
And how much?
It was about 50 grand a pool.
East Village is probably a little less expensive because it's smaller.
I think they were pretty within a few grand of each other, yeah. It all has to do with whether I think Spring Lake was pulling out of the pond, retention pond behind the pool, and the other two were putting in ground wells, like similar to Spring Lake or Spring Park.
And so, just to throw the question up again about how you spend your capital dollars, does it make sense to see what conversations come from the needs assessment of the community? How many dots or votes are gonna be for we don't have enough heated pools? And when we say that the other three pools don't have geothermal, they're not heated either, are they?
No, none
It's
of
not.
the other three are not heated.
So it would be heating additional pools with this new technology.
I think that's
It would heat the pools and cool in the summer.
And cool in the summer, yes.
So again, extends the life, the usage
Well,
ability.
it's back to CROA's to preserve and protect the values of the community overall. I mean, that right there makes sense to me.
Yeah, I don't want to kick the can down the road, but to me, in my mind, if you're spending your capital dollars on something that you're coming up with, how does that fit into the big picture of this master plan? Why not pickleball? Why not dog park lights? Why not every other question that's come up at this point in time?
What was the conversation the first time you guys put these geothermal in? Was it, let's put the first one in, it was Lakeside? Right?
Replacing existing heaters, right?
I don't know about Spring Park was the first geothermal. I don't know if that was
But it was going to be heated anyways.
right. So Spring Lake, or not Spring Lakes, Lakeside was just done, but that was to replace gas heaters that weren't cost
So
effective.
when it was built, it had
Yes,
heat.
original to the
So did it
construction.
come out of the replacement reserve fund, or was it a capital expenditure?
Lakeside was a reserve.
It would be reserved, that's a replacement.
Yeah,
These others would now be capital because they're not
They're
heated,
not
is that
replacing
correct?
something.
Correct.
So it's an improvement, not a replacement.
Is the budget overall per location for reserves for heat for pools?
No.
No,
Or is it general
nothing in
budget
there
it's
for
not like a,
heating?
not like a service area.
So it's a general for every pool?
Oh, no. I see
heating.
what you're saying. No, each, in the reserve, each facility has a line item.
Okay.
And specific to pools, like equipment, each one would say whether it has existing heat, it would do a reserve for that.
Todd, in your experience, what did it cost us to heat Lakeside before we got geothermal, and what is the operating cost?
What's Brian watching?
What was that?
It sounds like he's out,
Yeah.
because that's the conference music.
It's interesting.
All right, so
Okay.
what was the cost before and what's the cost after?
We were averaging,
cost.
well, the gas price to heat Lakeside was averaging $3,200 a month, but that was just during the, winter months, about 6 months, I would say, when they were heated. We were averaging, $1,800 during, we only have 3 months worth of heating for Lakeside, and that was January, February, March, I believe. Where that spike, and then it dropped down to $1,100, $1,200 after that. So it's probably half the cost.
Okay.
But again, you're talking about utilizing your capital dollars.
I understand what I'm
service.
getting at that, Steve.
Okay.
My question is, how many people really swim during the winter time here? I mean, how much is a
It
pool?
was heated.
Yeah, that's how many
Well,
can swim.
Spring Park, Spring Park, how much usage are we getting out of that during the winter time?
I see people there. I don't have an exact count on it. I mean,
A lot of people? We have 20 people per day there?
To me, just from popping in every day, it doesn't seem to fluctuate too much between the winter and summer. With the regulars that are there all the time.
Have we had a large-scale demand for heating in the other pools?
I don't think we've asked.
I think this is a nice to have down the road when we get rich again, but it's not something we need to do right now.
Yeah, I mean,
We're not
if
cheap.
it's a priority between putting geothermal in 3 pools, or adding a pickleball court, or putting a playground in Artisan Park, or some of these other things, I think that's the bigger
We
question.
need to go with the other
This is not
amenities first.
replacement of existing equipment that's failing, it's an upgrade, and in my mind, it needs to be considered in that context versus, that's why I asked about replacement reserves. I just think it's a different context, a different
If
discussion.
it's talking about saving money from an energy standpoint and trading out what we have for this, then yes, that makes perfect sense. But I'm in alignment with you. I think that this is another facility enhancement, that you're gonna find out in just a couple months what the community wants, what are their needs, and you're gonna
So
have
we'll make
only
sure,
so much
so
money.
that'll be on the listing for consideration.
Sure it
And
would.
if you wanna swim at a heated pool over the winter months, or winter days in Florida, we have them here. We do have pools that are heated.
Plus, yeah, Artisan has their heated pool as well.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
has
they're
just,
artisan.
didn't it just change from
Saltwater
just
to-
saltwater to
Well,
regular?
we're back to saltwater, but that's a different story.
Oh, my goodness.
All right, can we move on?
Yeah. Anything else on that? Quick update on lakeside fence replacement. I know that was covered at the workshop, and that's going to be a part of the board meeting in December?
It will, and I'm nervous because I'm on a vacation holiday experience to the Bahamas that week.
What are you going?
Susan did. The 17th, right before Christmas, I'll be in the Bahamas on a cruise ship with my parents,
Good.
enjoying life. So please vote in a positive manner as I'm gone. No, what we have, I don't have specific numbers for you yet. It's still a little too early for that. They'll be in the agenda package. As they become available, I'm going to send them out to you guys ahead of the meeting. So if you do have questions, please ask them before the 17th, because I'm not communicating with you after that. But let me go over this real quick for you. Well, we've got a lot of projects at Lakeside, and it's very crucial that they all happen at the same time because of all the planned activities, the pool being heated, the swim team from the high school has things going on, plus all the little other activities. So Lakeside Pool is due to have the finish of the interior finish of the pool redone. It does have a slow leak to it, so it's time to get that done. It was scheduled for 2018, probably pushing it to the winter of 2019. And that includes new tile along the race lanes, and the whole courts finish will be redone.
When was that last done?
That was last
Ballpark?
done 10 years ago.
So this is
Well, you've gotten a lot.
normal lifespan?
It is, yes,
Okay.
normal lifespan. We've got an extra couple of years out of it because when we had the pool deck redone, we
Right.
drained it, had it acid washed,
Right.
checked for leaks at that time. So we got 2 more years out of it. So it's good cost savings that
Okay.
way. It was minimal. Along with that, can you go to the next picture? Back up one. Forward 2.
What?
One more?
It
By
goes
the way.
this one, and it goes this one.
And go a couple more.
This one?
Yeah, well, you can see spots in the finish, so you get the idea, it needs to be redone. Next one. This is, under our line item, we have pool
Ouch.
equipment or mechanical equipment miscellaneous. This is a result of chemicals, salt being used for the pool. It wreaks havoc on your electrical equipment. So these are just enclosures. Can go one more. This is what houses all the controllers and contactors for the pool, pumps and motors and stuff like that. So when the pool's shut down, I'm getting bids to have the electrical replaced because the cabinets are rusted. So that's another item.
Is that, real quick, is that an ideal place for the chemicals? Is that, the chemicals are stored there?
Yeah, that is just a water salinity tank. So, it's not the best location for it, so things are being moved
Might be,
around.
yeah.
Right now, it's the only location for it. So we'll update that.
Keep that in mind.
Get with new technology. Next
So
one.
is that part just replacing the cabinets, or what's inside too?
It will be the cabinets and contactors that are in there. We had
Okay.
a budget of a little over 10,000 to be able to do
Okay.
that. So
All right.
that's quite feasible. You'll have proposals for that.
Good.
What's that yellow bucket? Sorry. Is that a
That's what
scooper
they
for the
scoop their
chemicals?
DE powder with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We gotta,
It's fancy,
we might
isn't
need
it?
to move chemicals away from this area.
Does that cause damage to those?
No, it doesn't. Fence. So we pushed off for 2 years now, replacing the pool fence and playground fence. As you can see, the aluminum has degraded. I looked into having the fence that's there now redone. It's really not cost effective to have it redone and get a good long-term fix for it. Can you go to the next picture?
These are original?
These are original.
Can I just ask, is all of this that we're talking about replacement reserve expense?
Yes, this is all reserve items. absolutely. That have been from 2017 through the first quarter of 2019.
Okay.
Next one. So what we're looking at here, this is the back left corner of the pool. Tennis courts are right in here. And next picture. What we're looking at is you got the two new geothermal heaters right there. We have to fence those in to keep them, out of people's hands or kids' hands. So the addition of fence would come across here behind them and then back around to just in cages. So you'll see an additional number on there that's not a reserve item. It would probably be operating to get that under control. Next one. Closer up, the gates that are here now, kind of ghetto looking. They'll be moved out, and it would be aluminum picket fence to dress up the area. Not real attractive right now. Fence, you can see this damaged fence there. This is around the playground. You can see it's right up against the sidewalk, which is a no-no anywhere in the world, because riding your bicycle along and catch it. I've done that before, I know. Next one. So here's an image of where the replacement fence would be. This top cap here continually falls off, loosens up. The pickets are screwed together. What we're looking at is a fence similar to Spring Lake, which is all welded connections instead of fasteners. You get a much longer useful life out of it. These are all just loosen up constantly. So it is time to get it replaced. So
That's a
playground
good,
fence.
that's a good point when you said the bike. Are you pushing the fence in a little bit?
Yes, we're going to go in at least a foot, if not a foot and a half. And that
That
opens
gives you the
it up
clearance.
and controls that somewhat.
And will it be in exactly the same place?
It will not. So I'm glad you asked that question. So moving it in, but we had talked during our board ride around about changing up how the playground is accessed and where that gate goes. So this is the back side of the building. If you go to the next picture, this is where we want to cut it off right here from the building over, so it stops people from that aren't residents just wandering around looking for the bathroom. They're not coming up through the building and getting into that area that kind of keeps them out by the lake. Next picture. So that would basically eliminate a lot of this fence. So some cost savings, and then right across here would be the fence and gate to get out into the playground.
So that sidewalk becomes private, in a sense?
Yeah.
Or
Would be
control
part of
access
the
sidewalk.
Playground side of the building.
Got it.
And one more picture. There's basically the gate would go right in here, and that would eliminate all that fence going around to the next side gate. One more picture. Isn't this lovely?
Oh, God.
Is that really?
Shows us.
Who picked those colors?
Disclaimer, I had nothing to do with these colors. This is the women's restroom at Lakeside.
No wonder we haven't seen that.
I already talked about this.
God.
It looks like a
It would have been weird if you had seen it.
God.
So, yeah, I'm not impressed with this. So part of our 2019 figures is to redo the Lakeside interior. I think the ladies
Please.
much appreciate our efforts. So we'll get rid of the small world colors. It also would include some flooring in here. This is a poured-in-place rubberized material, which is a horrible idea for bathrooms because it's very hard to clean, and we'll leave it at that. So it would be paint colors, changed up flooring, and probably get rid of the plastic dispensers.
Stalls stay the same?
Stalls stay the same. They were replaced in 2012, I believe,
Okay.
with a solid PVC.
You're gonna get rid of the plastic dispensers for the paper, right?
Yes.
I gotta tell you, I work at the USO today, and we used to have those air things at the USO. Guess what they're replacing with?
Paper towels?
Paper. Because there's water all over underneath the
Sure.
dispensers.
Right.
Yeah, so these would come down to ADA requirements, and the louvers and the doors will be replaced. Because kids seem to like to kick out the louvers. So, much improvement, and inside is not that color, thank goodness. but same, paint freshening up and indoors and, dispensers.
Good.
As well as the Jones room floor we're looking at. Right now has bamboo flooring. Terrible product. I mean, it's great, eco-friendly, but commercial-wise, it doesn't hold up, and that's been proven over the years. It was a great idea. A lot of people have done that, just not in a commercial setting. So right now there's wood plank tile in the kitchen that we'll plan on just finishing that out and be more durable.
Wood plank looking tile, yeah.
Yeah, and it holds up, it's in the kitchen now and it holds up great, so we'll just blow it out into that room and make sure it's a user.
So all of this will be in our board packet for December, so
It
you
will
can.
be, yep, with updates.
You can change that slide anytime now.
Well, so- And we'll have color samples to review, right?
We will. Yes.
No,
Yes.
we won't. Will we?
I have
Yes.
a question for, no.
Great.
I have a question about the color of the fence.
The color of the fence,
Your
right now is
opinion.
bronze. All of our other fences are black, except for Spring Lake, which is the Celebration of Green color. So my proposal was either go with black or the green, but I wouldn't go with bronze because we have bronze nowhere else in the community. So that would be an ARC thing that we'll let them, unless y'all want to make that decision, we'll let ARC decide
as long
on
as
it.
they make that, yeah.
Because the fence style will change slightly from what's there.
We control ARC.
You do,
So
yes.
feedback
You have the
from us,
final
yeah.
say so.
I mean,
Yeah, they work for us.
like the Spring Park pool, it is a black fence, but it would make more sense if that was actually a bronze or a brown fence, because that coordinates with the color and the style.
Yeah.
So it's,
I tell you what, bronze looks great.
listen, it's my OCD, all right? This is-
Bronze looks great for the first 5 years, and then it fades badly. Then you gotta repaint
That's
it or
a better-
something with it.
there we go.
Yes. And you can't, it's hard to touch up bronze, but black you can
spray
touch
it.
up.
You can spray it, it works
Yeah.
okay. But it's not an easy color to
Is
paint.
not. No, sure isn't. So those are the items. I went through it quickly, but
That's
I'll
good. No,
keep
that's
you all
very helpful.
updated.
No, I really appreciate these previews before we get to the board packet. It just makes it so much easier
Yeah, it's helpful.
to deal with it, and I think we've
Great.
approved just about everything you've
Yeah.
asked for, so, it's worth the time and
You don't
investment.
want to send a reminder picture of the board packet.
Oh, I'll make sure that's in the board packet.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Well, I have 3 more items that are going to be on the agenda package. If
Good.
you can give me 5 more minutes.
Yep.
Pool furniture. We've done the pool furniture package for Spring Park and Lakeside. I hope you all agree that it looks nice. It's a durable product. I would like to finish out North Village and East Village as originally planned, and those numbers remain the same.
We have deferred those.
You deferred those
We chose to
see
save it
how,
for the next year.
see how the residents like the furniture. I think everybody but one shorter individual loves the furniture, so,
Can I ask, if it's approved in December, would that mean that it would be actually purchased in January?
it would be in January purchase, yeah. It would.
I'm moving right past that comment and asking a follow-up question. So if we buy it and if we approve it in December, it will be purchased next year, right?
Yeah, well, they'd need a 50% deposit, so,
But then
Ah,
it wouldn't
yes.
take place until 2019.
correct. But it was originally in the reserve study for 2016 and 2017.
I understand, but with the comment of the board deferred it until 2019, it's essentially going to be done in 2019, just with the approval at this meeting.
Right.
And the money's there,
Right.
because it's replacement
No, it
reserve.
all makes
so-
sense. My big thing that time was just make sure the quality's there, the maintenance is there, before we spend all this money on something new.
Right.
Right.
Everywhere, let's make sure it's working.
And I've received a lot of nice compliments from older folks, my age and older. I won't give a specific time frame. That the high top chairs that we put in are much easier to maneuver in and out of because you don't have to, push to get up out of this shorter chairs.
Wow.
So they have been a good addition. One last thing before I embarrass y'all.
I thought you had 3.
Quick question.
I thought you had-
Protected class now.
White-haired people. At Artisan Park, they refurbished their pool chairs and equipment, and that's been met with a great deal of success, and it saved a lot of money, and it was a good process for them.
Sure.
Have you considered that or looked at that? Or?
We have, actually, we have done that in the past for many years, and it was with the strap type furniture.
Yeah, right.
The new furniture we've gone to is called a sling product. It's a solid piece fabric, and we would still have, and we still do have, every 3 years we would recover the chairs because chemicals and sun lotions and everything break down. The frames remain the same, but you just update the fabric.
The color of the furniture, it's the same color everywhere?
It is. It's all the bronze.
Bronze and matches the fence.
Your other items.
So the two would have been North Village and East Village furniture.
Oh, okay.
Third one is, we have in our reserves for next year, Spring Lake Fitness Center is due for equipment replacement. We can't wait for some of that. We're looking at 2 treadmills that need to be replaced at a cost of $6,986. That's based on the Sprint equipment that we have recently replaced through operating budget through First Place Fitness equipment. This goes towards working with Mattamy in the future on their
You're saying David Wheatley.
Yeah,
I didn't say that.
Just say the name.
So this might be sufficient for an individual home, but not for
Correct.
a larger scale.
So we've had to upgrade, we've already upgraded 2 of the bicycle units and 2 ellipticals. Treadmills are the most expensive product there. And luckily, we've got that in the reserves to be able to do. So that'll be on your agenda for
Is it part of Spring Lake
December.
replacement reserves?
It is.
Okay,
Yep.
got it.
That's all I have, I think. Yep, that's all I have. Thank you guys for your time. I greatly appreciate it.
So, one last item, lawn equipment repair services. That was suggested by a resident. Is that something we want to look at all?
I choose not to.
Fine, you,
We're not in that business.
That's not our, that,
okay,
yeah, no.
I agree. So we have consensus on that. Any alternative management recommendation?
No.
Thank you, enough said.
Let me spin that really quick. If a resident, let's just say they were really adamant about this, and they said, hey, I will find a contractor, I will bring him to town, all that fun stuff, just trying to put options out there, would we open up an area to allow them?
We don't have a facility for it.
Set a parking lot, like kind of a thing? 'Cause
You
I
know,
know what
first-
There's
first
all kinds of
Saturday,
issues with chemicals and
Yeah.
oil and all kinds of stuff.
I just want to make sure we're saying not just no, we have a full reason why, because I feel like we're getting here.
Okay. Anything else?
To adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Second, thank you.
Just happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to all.
And to
Thanksgiving, you guys.
our audience today and to everybody watching at home still. Thanksgiving.
And Brian, if he's there.
Thank you for a productive meeting. We accomplished a lot. Thank you.
Oh, it's Mr. Jackson's birthday today too. I don't know if you guys know.
Oh.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.